7th, 2023. Regular City Council meeting is called to order. The time is 6 p.m. Before we begin, Council, please put away cell phones. If you have personal business during the meeting, please move for a recess. If you are participating telephonically, please mute your phone unless you are speaking. Also, when speaking, please state your name for those streaming the meeting. As a reminder to all attendees, this meeting is being streamed live. The camera is located directly in the back of the council chambers above the clock. Robert's Rules of Order is a parliamentary authority for council meetings under Wasilla Municipal Code 2.04.090. Under this authority, I respectfully request council observe the following. Number 1, kindly seek recognition before speaking. Number 2, that no member speaks more than twice on the same motion without an affirmative vote on a motion to suspend the rules. Number 3, that no member speaks a second time until everyone who wishes to do so has spoken once. The purpose of recognizing these rules is to ensure the right to speak is equally respected and that discussion is not dominated. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Graham?
Here.
Councilmember Johnson?
Here.
Councilmember Crafton?
Here.
Councilmember Vlock?
Here.
Councilmember Rubeo?
Here.
Councilmember Sullivan Leonard?
Here.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You do have a quorum. All members are participating with us in chambers except for Councilmembers Sullivan Leonard and Vlock, who are participating telephonically.
Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and Councilmember Lena Rubio lead us.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The first item of business is approval of the agenda. Before changes are requested, are there conflicts of interest to declare? No? Okay. Hearing none, I have one change to the agenda. Is there an objection to moving the executive session item 14.1 to item 6.4 after the report from the library director? Okay. Hearing none, are there further changes to the agenda?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move item 8.3.1, resolution serial number 23-41, new business, and move item 8.4.2, AM number 23-61 to new business.
Okay. Mr. Crofton.
Madam Mayor, can I move 8.4.1 AM number 2360 to new business, please?
Okay. Are there any other changes? Is there an objection to the motion? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as amended. There are no special orders of the day, so we'll move to commission and agency reports. Public Works Director, Eric Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have the next two items, so I'll just be up here for both of them. So for the Airport Advisory Commission, we held our November meeting on Thursday, November 16th, excuse me. Due to the weather and some scheduling issues, we did not have a quorum, so the meeting was canceled at 6:20 when only two of the Advisory Commission members were present. Our next meeting will be in January on the third Thursday of the month, and that will coincide with the next day will be another airport master planning meeting, which will be held at the Menard Center. Moving on to 6.2, the Spruce Water Tower Generation Report. What I've done is I'm providing an update today on the FEMA process, so I'm calling this the January 22 windstorm FEMA update number 2. As you'll recall, the city suffered substantial damage to several parts of our infrastructure, including the water tower and the installation at our Spruce Well. We've been working with FEMA to rebuild, reconstruct, and also improve our resiliency with that facility. And so we're going to talk about the repairs that are complete, the resiliency improvements, and I'll give a summary at the end. This is a picture of what was left of the Spruce Water Tower after that event. As we've discussed before, the event took place. There was a disaster declaration that allowed FEMA to join us in the repairs. One of the requirements by FEMA is that we look for opportunities to improve the resiliency of this infrastructure. So the idea is not only to repair it, but also to protect that infrastructure into the future. So we greatly appreciate FEMA's support in that because we are striving to make our infrastructure more resilient, which protects our community and keeps our way of life moving even after storms. So we have completed all the repairs, but now we're moving into the final resiliency step. And one of those is to improve our backup generation capacity at the Spruce Well and Water Tower facility. As I mentioned, the tank coating and the re-insulation of the water tower is complete. This picture is important to note because this is about a week ago when we got that snowstorm that preceded the blizzard warning. The main well pump for our 14-inch well at Spruce, which normally produces about 1,000 gallons a minute of water, went offline for some reason. And you may recall at our last council meeting there was an IM that talked about the Spruce backup well. That is what kept the water in the pipes for the city. That backup well that we installed as a resiliency measure saved our bacon. On the same day that we're pulling out the failed master well, we had a 7 to 8 hour power outage at the facility. The backup generator is a 35-year-old Mitsubishi diesel generator, and it is very difficult to get parts for, and it did not automatically start. So while we were pulling out the well, and while the backup well went offline because of the power outage, we worked with the state emergency response group and found a state generator which was not in a ready state of use. We had to buy a new battery for it. We had to fill it up with fuel. We had to get it out of a facility that was burned in. So that took us most of the day to get operational again. And then MEA was able to get that power line back on. The next day, we reconnected the wires that were necessary to use that borrowed generator, and the power went out again. And so we were able to use that generator for the next 2 days. But we lost power at that facility for a total of 9 hours from that one snow event. And so it just keeps illustrating the weakness and unreliability of that existing generation facility. So as we're moving towards resiliency, we're tasked with the decision of what the next step is. We rely a lot on backup diesel generators, but the literature shows that they're not a very resilient choice. There's been a lot of research into how to protect critical infrastructure such as our system, and the industry talks about 99.999% reliability, and that's measured in a function of downtime. Just using the last 3 power outages that we've had at that facility because of transmission lines in and around the community, we're operating on about a 99.806% operation. That means that we've lost power for at least 17 hours this year alone. And so that risk is, in our minds and in FEMA's minds, not acceptable. And so instead of identifying another backup generator that will suffer from the same risk of non-starting failures, we're working with FEMA to identify different generation technologies such as gas turbines or other facilities, other infrastructure that has uptime that we're looking for because of this critical infrastructure. The picture in the lower left is that mobile generator that we have borrowed. We will be, it is online and it is wired into that facility right now as we wait an approximate 3 months for the replacement parts that our antiquated generator requires. Without that, we don't have the peace of mind that we'll have water service if the power goes down again. We talked a little bit about how important the 8-inch backup well was. The proposed technology used by several manufacturers would be a gas turbine system that has 3 redundant generation units that are connected together based on the loads required for our pumps that would serve as the primary power source for that facility, but it would still be connected to MEA power as the backup. And so we would basically swap what our primary power is and then use MEA as our backup. You'll see later in the meeting packet under ordinance number 2330 that we're requesting authorization and funds to put out a bid to have suppliers of this technology submit their selected components to provide that new backup system. And so I wanted to take the opportunity to just highlight the departure from historical setup. So this idea that we produce our own power and then use MEA as a backup is a paradigm shift, and it's really to highlight the vulnerability of the current water supply for the city. The Spruce Well provides about 90% of our normal water. When we had supply issues with the well going down, my staff responded admirably by compartmentalizing the water supply, reinitializing some wells that we don't typically use, but we keep on standby status. And that work is, it's no small feat. We keep all of our testing, sampling, and reporting up to date with DEC. And we usually have them in standby mode, and our staff goes to every site, turns some valves, turns on some electronic controls, and gets them going. But it's on wells that produce 150 gallons per minute versus 1,000. So we need 10 of those wells up and running at all times to match what Spruce provides. So to have a resilient, diverse system would require several more Spruce wells, and unfortunately those are hard to find. And we've drilled some exploratory wells and haven't been fortunate enough to find any new high-producing wells. So we'll continue to do that, but we'll also continue to maintain the integrity of the entire list of wells that we have in the city so that we have some sort of redundancy. But in response to the FEMA project that we're discussing, FEMA has provided us with a letter of support that's in your packet for that resolution, that ordinance, about their willingness to support that increased resiliency and help us with a problem that we don't have other solutions for otherwise. What I've noticed with diesel backup generators is when they're new, they are unlikely to fail, but it doesn't take very long for components to age out of the system. We have a diesel backup generator for this building. It has a control panel that highlights its condition, and it's used occasionally when the power goes out, and it is surprising how often features fail. Last week, the glycol preheater, which keeps the engine at a constant temperature so that it starts well, because it is a diesel engine, it failed on its own. And so they're made to be backup generators, but they also, I'm finding there aren't a lot of repercussions when they don't start. We don't have, the warranty doesn't last that long, and when they don't start, there's no one to call. It's our problem, and we have contractors that are in charge of the maintenance, but when they don't start, that's a failure. And this system is too important to allow it to operate that way. So moving forward, we're continuing to identify those features or those flaws within our systems that put us at risk as we move forward with a more resilient and redundant system. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Madam Mayor, Director, I have two questions. So, pardon me. The first question is, at least in my industry, backup generator is ultimately important. Okay, if you lose your backup generator on an airplane, you got a problem. We test them minimally every day, and if you're on an oceanic flight, it has to be tested prior to going into oceanic airspace. How often do we test these generators that we're going to use in a backup mode, and are they on a test cycle? That's question number one.
Thank you for that question. They are on a test cycle. They tend to be once a week, and they'll run on a non-peak time. I believe this building's generator starts on a Wednesday in the morning. You want to be around so that you can identify if it didn't start. So it's typically during business hours once a week.
Thank you. The second question is, if we're going to be generating our own electricity, which ostensibly sounds like a good idea, what is the differential in cost that we're going to incur between our own power generation and actually buying power from MEA?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So we have a proposal from one supplier of this technology. Our plan is to put it out for bid so that all suppliers can sell themselves and explain why their system is the best. But this one supplier, the Capstone product, advertises to us that they can cut our fuel usage, our cost to generate electricity by about 45%. So it's not a 50% reduction, but it's a substantial reduction, about 45%.
Thank you.
Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I apologize for going to my phone here, but I need to see a calendar for January. Thank you for the report. It's very informative. So if ordinance serial 2333 is approved, and that won't be until the next two council meetings from now, which will be January.
Be December.
On December 11th.
2 meetings from now? Oh, well, I'm sorry. So if that is approved on December 11th, what's the time frame for getting that online? I know you talked about having that state's generator for 3 months. Is that sufficient time to order that and have it delivered and installed and operational, or is the state only guaranteeing us those 3 months? What's the status?
The status of the borrow generator, they'll have to pry it from my hands. We got it running, and it's protecting our water system, so they'll have to come get it from me. But your question about the selection process, so after December 11th, if it's approved, then we'll go out for a regular bid time, at least 30 days, where we ask suppliers to put together a package and provide a cost about it, and then we'll select that process, technology that meets our needs based on price and quality. And then I expect at least 12 weeks or more to get that infrastructure. So we're going to be at risk for several more months until we can get some new technology up there. Part of the plan is to reuse some of the infrastructure, and so right now where the fuel storage tank is where this technology would be installed, so there'd be a switchover period that we'd need to be protected from.
And will the $800,000 that you're looking at, will that cover the change in infrastructure, removing a storage tank and so on and so forth, or is that just the cost of the equipment?
That's just the cost of the equipment.
Any other questions? Hearing none. Thank you, Director Shaw. We will now hear from the library director. Unless objection is raised and a decision to override the decision of the chair is affirmed. Council, please limit your questions to no more than 2.
My name is Zane Treesh. I'm the library director for the city of Wasilla. And I didn't receive any questions, so I think I can start with the reconsideration policy. Or do you want me to start with the collection development policy and then the, how we determine where we place a book based on age?
Start with your collection development.
Okay. Okay. So our collection development policy is on our website. It's 2 pages. It gives us the criteria, the scope of the collection, the responsibility for material selection, and the criteria for selection. The criteria for selection, none of these are set in stone. You don't have to. These are guidelines. These are so that the individual that's doing the selection, we have 3 different people that do selection for our library. They're set so that hopefully most of our biases are taken out. So if I like dogs but don't like cats, I don't not order any cat books. And so using these collection development criteria, some of the factors here, the author's reputation and significance as a writer, the importance, the subject matter to the collection, the availability of the material in other libraries or in print, timeliness or permanence of the book, authoritativeness, inclusion in standard bibliographies or indexes, price, demand, format, including quality of binding, type, legibility. And part of that format, including the quality of the binding, is it produced by a major publisher? Is the book going to last? Is it going to, we're a public collection. Some of these items can be circulated anywhere from 20 to 70 times. So is it going to last? So that's part of our criteria. The author's reputation, are they nationally known? Are they, is this a book that is going to be requested? Is it a popular item? Is it a book that the author may already have a following? Is the author a expert in the field? And so if they are, it'd help if we get that book so that so we have it for our patrons to use. When the selectors are doing their selection, a lot of times this is before the book's been published. So a lot of what our ordering is done through Ingram, which is a vendor, and so we have what are called carts. And this isn't the only place we get it, but it's one of our major suppliers. So you look through these carts and it lists books that are on different subjects, topics that are coming out in the next 3 months, 2 months, 3 months. You can order them ahead of time, and they have links to reviews, the print run, press run, which gives you an idea how popular it's going to be, and then it lets you know the availability, what day it's going to be published, and when we can expect to see it on our shelves. We have the other collection development policy also talks about gifts, maintaining the collection. So withdrawing material is also done kind of based on how many items the item has been checked out, or how many times the item has been checked out, condition of the book. Many of the factors that go into putting the book in the collection are also used to remove a book from the collection. We have a statement here about censorship. I'll just go ahead and read the 2 paragraphs here. It's Wasilla Public Library recognizes the right of every citizen to read and gather information and his or her right to freedom from censorship by other persons. Many books are controversial and any given item may offend some persons. However, selection for this library will not be made on the basis of anticipated approval or disapproval, but solely on the merits of the material in relation to the building of the collection and to serve the interests of all readers. This library holds censorship to be a purely individual matter and declares that while anyone is free to reject for himself books and other materials which he does not approve, he cannot exercise this right of censorship to restrict the freedom of others. With respect to the use of our library, With respect to the use of library materials by children, the decision as to what a minor may read is the responsibility of his or her parent or guardian. Selection will not be inhibited by the possibility that books may inadvertently come into the possession of minors. And I might touch on that a little bit. Currently we've had a behavior policy, code of conduct, if you will. And so in that code of conduct is minors, to have unaccompanied minors are not to be in the building if they're unaccompanied without the permission and a signature of the parent or guardian that they can be unaccompanied. So if you go into the library now, there's a sign to the right. There's also when they sign up for a library card, and this has been in place for registration for library cards for many years before I got here. So first with the library card, when they sign up a minor for the library card, that's someone under 18, the parent or guardian is saying, it agrees to that I am financially responsible for this individual, and I am also responsible for the materials they take out from this library. On our sign, when you walk in, it says no minors can be unaccompanied here without that paper from the parent saying they can be here unaccompanied because I trust them. Here's their contact information. If you have troubles with them, you can give me a call. Here's their name. And I'm letting them in the library without the parent or guardian being there, is what they're saying, because they trust their minor to do what they think is right for the parent. So that's kind of the collection development policy in a nutshell, I guess. The next part would be once we have those books, which just a few raw numbers. Last year we circulated 241,000 physical items in that year. That was a 50,000 item increase over the year before. We had 105,000 patrons come through the door. That's 105. That's 20,000 more than the year before. We added approximately 5,700 items, physical items, to the collection. That's just books, not counting your videos or books on CD or those playways, anything like that. So I thought I'd move on to the next thing was what do we do, especially in the young adult or kids area, for deciding what section to put that in. Where do we decide what part of the library or what part of the youth area, kids area should a book go? So this is, and I can give this to the council if they want a copy, but I'll just kind of, it's not too long, I'll read through it here to try to clarify how that decision is made. So materials that have been selected for purchase, according to WPL's existing collection policy, are subjected to the following cataloging process once they have been received. The item is scanned into WorldCat to locate the proper catalog record, update Wasilla Library's holdings, and download the record into the Wasilla Library online catalog. WorldCat is a service used by millions of libraries worldwide to properly document the items that are held and make them accessible through library catalog searches. When the proper catalog record has been located and downloaded, the local cataloger reviews the record. In addition to basic information about the item, such as the title, publication date, and physical description, cataloging librarians at WorldCat include additional information regarding the item's content and intended audience. Some of that information is provided by the publisher, and some is gleaned from close inspection of the item by the cataloging librarians. The image below, and there's a sample here, shows a raw catalog record. The item's title, recommended audience, and descriptor as juvenile literature are highlighted. Materials intended for older youth will reflect that information in line 521. Those are marked numbers, which is how you put, anyway, it's librarian talk, I guess. Intended audience will be classified as young adult, nonfiction, or materials intended for older youth that will reflect that information in line 521. Intended audience will be classified as young adult, nonfiction, or young adult fiction. Just a couple more things. In the record above, you will notice there are several lines dedicated to the item's content or the subjects included in the work. If sensitive topics are listed in the subject headings, the local cataloger will spend extra time paging through the item to review the language or images used and the age-appropriate handling of those topics. It is not possible to review every word or page of a new library item to scan for content in the time allowed. The cataloger uses their best judgment to make a determination based on the information available. A final rule of thumb is often employed is to scan the item synopsis to determine the age of the protagonist in the works of fiction. Most often a protagonist between the ages of 0 and 13 will be of most interest to readers in the juvenile section, which is the children's room where we have the glass area. Within those area there is the children's room, or that part. Protagonists aged 12 to 18 will be more relatable to readers in the young adult section. Protagonists 19 and older are nearly always placed in the adult section. You'll note that there's some overlap between the sections. It's not unheard of for books with juvenile protagonists to be located in the adult section if the content merits it. Now, I guess I can touch on our reconsideration materials policy, and I won't read this. You guys have, I think it was handed out a couple times, but I will say the reconsideration materials policy, the guidelines we have, the 11 steps that are here, have been in place, as near as I can tell, since 2005. So that's how long this policy's been in place. I've talked to our city attorney. There's nothing in here that is contrary to the law. However, it's 18 years old, and we can take a look at it. If city council wants to look at it, we can revisit how the reconsideration is done. So that's part of it. And I think we've seen the reconsideration policy a few times. In regards to the reconsideration that's going on now with the book Red Hood, we followed our reconsideration of materials policy. We're still waiting to hear back from the reconsideration committee, which is number 7. We're waiting for, that'd be number 8. We're waiting for on the steps. But in light of what's come out with the Attorney General for the state of Alaska, with the ACLU lawsuit against the school board regarding children's materials in school libraries, what I'm recommending to council, and I've talked to both the mayor and the attorney, city attorney about this, is that temporarily, because we don't want to get on the wrong side of federal law either, temporarily we move everything in the young adult section to the adult section. And what that entails is, first of all, there's over 2,000 items there, and there's about 5 ranges. They have about 100 shelves, approximately 20 to 25 per shelf. We put signs up to begin with. We can't label all 2,000 without shutting down the library for a month or so to relabel everything adult. We'll put signs up at the end of the shelving saying that these are now an adult area, all of them, and we will wait to see what happens around the state and guidance there through city council, how they want to handle reconsideration, and also with what happens with the state attorney letter that went out that you guys may have seen or not, and then also with what happens with the ACLU case against the school board and school district. Also, we're waiting, one other place we're waiting to hear back from is I'm on the Governor's Library Advisory Council. I put in a question to the ex officio for that to see if the Library Advisory Council for the governor would be willing to meet to try to get some clarification to the public libraries throughout the state regarding this issue. It's something we'd also need to wait to see before we go change everything with our policies on that. I haven't heard back from them yet on that. I think that covers that. I guess I'm open for questions. Is that?
Okay, questions? Ian?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, thanks for coming down here, Director. It's great to hear what the process is. I think, again, a lot of this was given to us earlier, so we've seen it, but I just appreciate a little bit more insight on how this is working. I think it also helps the public understand how it works as well. And I think that, again, temporarily at least, moving everything and just saying, hey, we understand that there's some concerns around books in this section. I think that's going to help a lot of people. The big thing here, again, is not that we're trying to ban books. We just want to understand how they're ending up in a certain section of the library. Once a book is placed there, is the only way to get it moved, not removed, but moved to the adult section by a member of the library coming forward and submitting the process, or is there something in the library staff where they're actively reviewing books that might have been called into question, or maybe parents came in and said, hey, this book is odd, we saw some things in here that might be questionable, could you guys take a look at? Do we see that at all?
So when we look into we're following the collection development guidelines to begin with. And so we're using that to put it, and we're using the guidelines to put it in the age appropriate area best we can. Certainly the reconsideration policy is there, and any member of the public can ask to have a book moved or removed. And that's when they're given the policy, the steps, and first we have a talk, myself and the patron, and then we go through the steps. We're not preemptively looking at books before someone says something, because we've already done a lot of that process, hopefully. But what we do is we have regular reports that tell us how often a book is being used. And we see the wear and tear that on that book. So to remove a book, we remove books all the time from the library. You remove books based on circulation. If it hasn't, we have a report that runs, it used to be 5 years, but now it's going to 3 years because of the space we have on our shelves. If a book hasn't circulated a certain number of times or seems within a year or the 5 years based on an average, then the book will get removed. If the content, we would look at content. Your concern, or the concern we had when something comes up with the community without coming to me first, that did happen. On May 8th, the city clerk was given a stack of about this high of papers, and this is the first page of it, and it lists 37 books, 2 DVDs, and 4 audio. They came to the city clerk first, or the city council at that meeting, and so they bypassed the steps of what we do for a reconsideration committee. But we did look at the list that was on it. Of this list, 30 of them were already in the adult section. And they all had like this for each book. And it says, what, if any, action would you like the library to take regarding the material in question? Immediately retrieve book, remove book from collection, library premises, and destroy. That was on May 8th, and we did look at those books under the collection development reconsideration policy, but we didn't take it all the way because the first step had been skipped. Does that answer your question, or am I?
For the most part.
Mr. Johnson.
Madam Mayor, thank you, Director Trish. I appreciate your opening comments with respect to your selection process. We've listened to a lot of testimony. We've heard words bantered around banning books, freedom of speech, etc. And I appreciate your comments regarding to the selection of books. After the last meeting, I sort of had a thought in the back of my head, how did we get to where we are now today? So this will take just about 2 minutes. I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, if I go too long, please cut me off. I decided I'd do a little bit of research. And in regard to your selection of books, let me start with this book right here.
Yes, sir.
Let's see, Robert F. Kennedy is currently a candidate for president. It's on the bestseller list. It's not in our library. One copy in an obscure location in Alaska. His book, Letter to the Liberals, isn't covered in any of our Alaska libraries. And yet it's, again, like Kennedy, it's on the bestseller list. Robert P. George. Most people here probably don't know who he is. He's one of the preeminent professors of law at Princeton University. Him and several liberal law professors have written a whole series of books, Conscience and Enemies, Dogmas in a Liberal Secularism, Ideals and Institutions. There isn't any books in our library at all by him, and he's one of the preeminent law people. He is currently circulating and going around on speaking tours. Then there's Dr. Miriam Grossman. Does anybody know who she is? Probably not. She's one of the premier MDs and PhDs in child psychology. Her book, Lost in Transnation, that's correct, Lost in Transnation, is currently on the bestseller book. It is one of the premier books talking about what is going on in our society today. There is one copy of that book within the system. Wow, we're doing pretty good here in Alaska. I've got a book that is conservative in nature. Then there's Dr. Thomas Sorrell. He is PhD, Harvard, Princeton, and University of Chicago. He has a whole smear of books, some of which are selling rather well, but he is one of the most prolific writers in terms of economics, particularly with regard to today's issues that the society is facing. He's a man of color. He's made it up from the grassroots and pulled it up, and he's now, as I said, one of the premier people in the United States. He's currently at the Hoover Institute and speaks an awful lot. Let's go to the next one. Justice Clarence Thomas. Currently, he's really being hit really hard with a lot of books. In fact, there are about 6 or 7 books defaming him in the Alaska Library Association. We don't have one book written by him at all. Not one. And yet he's on the Supreme Court of the United States. Now, we in Alaska here, especially in Wasilla, we're a fairly conservative bunch. I think within about 5 miles of here, I can go to 3 very conservative evangelical churches that have a really wide following. A lot of people in those churches are going to know of this next gentleman, Dr. Vodi Bokman. He is a professor of theology. He grew up as a black man in southern LA, then went on to Birmingham, went on and got 2 PhDs, and now has a very popular book called Fault Lines. Oh shoot, I don't have the whole name here. It's called Fault Lines, Social Justice or something like that. And now for the last one is we also here in the Wasilla Valley have an awful lot of homeschoolers. We have available to us now many books to homeschoolers that which no one is really going to question. In fact, there's many school districts which have now opened up these books to schools themselves. There's the Auto Tale series, which talks about the United States and the Tucker twins. They're published by PragerU, and they have a wide circulation. And again, they're not in our library. So when I look down the whole list, all I see is Wasilla doesn't have, Wasilla doesn't have, Wasilla doesn't have, Alaska doesn't have, Alaska has one, Alaska has this. So I'm looking at it and saying, okay, I'm not the best in terms of conservative thought here in the United States. There's probably people that know a lot better, but what I see here in Wasilla is we're not really hitting all of the audiences that we really should be, and yet according to your selection criteria that you went at the beginning of it, you don't have any of the books that would really interest me or a lot of our clientele. So we have a problem.
Mr.
We
Johnson.
don't have a solution yet, and that's my comment. Thank you.
So,
Okay. Please hold your applause.
Thank you for bringing that to my attention, Councilman. Some of the books, with being on bestseller lists, we should have them. And so we have what
Let's
we
run it.
have. We
Put it in the
have.
library.
We will. We have a purchase request on our website, and so if our selector missed something, or if it wasn't in the carts on the through Ingram and missed it and then saw it later, we certainly try to be as comprehensive as we can to show, like I said, every aspect, every one of those that you listed. If it had been put in for a purchase request before now, it would have been purchased and added to our catalog. But we had not seen that. Unfortunately, we overlooked it. I can't tell you why, but we would certainly add it. Any of those that you mentioned, especially the ones on the bestseller list. I assume you're talking about the New York Times bestseller list? Yes. Okay, so if you want to give me you got a list, and if you want to email that to me, we can make sure we can take care of that situation right away. And we have the purchase request is on our website. We try to fill those as best we can. The only time we don't is perhaps if it's like a $150 book that we know that only one person's going to check out on whatever. It still has to meet the collection development criteria, but those would certainly meet our criteria, and we will try to rectify that.
Mayor.
Holly?
If I could, I'd like to interject here for a
Yes,
moment. And
please.
So one thing I want to say is what I'm hearing from Councilmember Johnson is an excellent example of why council may want to update and review your policies and procedures and create a different mechanism for approval or selection that's entirely appropriate and within council's authority. However, where council is now, council does not have a role to play in that selection process outside your role as individuals and library goers who take advantage of the policy and procedures. Now again, council can certainly change that, and council ultimately, as the governing body, has authority to do that. And so that was one of the things when the administration was looking at this, what the policies and procedures were, which were put in place long before this administration or your current director came to their positions, right? We looked at what those were. They are lawful, and the library staff, the administration, and the city are compliant with those policies and procedures, and they're pretty standard. They're pretty standard policies and procedures we see throughout, but there is a change going on in our country. We see a lot of a shift towards being more specific regarding what kind of, like looking more specifically, say, at language or sexually explicit content, what that looks like, and actually defining it. So that is an option that some communities have taken. In Alaska, we have a lot of communities that create a library advisory commission, and those are appointed positions that look over the selection, look over the library collection, and that is a possibility. Juneau and I believe Ketchikan also uses a library advisory commission or committee that's appointed. So these are all options, but when we were talking about those options, one of the things the administration was looking at is when is it an appropriate time to delve into that activity. And so I think I'll defer to the mayor and the library director on this, but I think what we were looking at is we've got a pending lawsuit against the school district, in part regarding removal of certain books, and those books are in the young adult section. Those are books that are in our young adult section. Those are books on a list that have come before us. So we also have a letter from the Attorney General and the Attorney General has the ability to change their position as an office. But we have a letter in which they've taken a different position on criminal statutes than they took at the time those statutes were adopted. So previously, for example, the Attorney General's office testified that one of the statutes did not apply to written work. And we have that, that's in the legislative history. But now, and again, this is not an insult or a judgment of the Attorney General's office, but there's been a shift. And so being able to really understand that shift and understand the implications is an important component for the city, in my legal opinion. So that, and I think also the administration is looking at that. And finally, they're looking at hopefully the governor's advisory policy group. I think it's called the Library Advisory Council. That is a great tool to the state of Alaska, and that's something I think, especially having our director as a member, might be another tool to get a model policy and procedure out there that then the council can turn to. So those are a lot of the pieces, but I do want to remind council that as it stands with the policy and procedure in place, while we have a very responsive director who is willing to add all of those books, I would say, as a matter of law, I would ask that you use the channels as a citizen. It sounds like they'll be open, but use those channels and avoid directing policy and procedure or the outcome of that policy and procedure at this junction, because it's not part of the policy and procedure. Does that make sense?
Okay. Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Zane, for being here today. A couple of things, and I'll just go through it all at once, and you can answer them as you see fit. But there's a lot of talk now about banning books and a lot of talk about freedom of speech, you know. So I'd like to know what you would consider a banning of a book. You know, I haven't heard any discussion anywhere in the borough of books being banned. I've heard of books being moved to different spots or being made unavailable in schools. I don't think that falls under banning of books, and I don't think having books available or not available has anything to do with freedom of speech, as the United States Supreme Court defines freedom of speech here. So I'd be interested to hear how you think on that. And also, as a member of the governor's council there, you know, the governor is and his administration are big believers in local control. You know, so they would rather stay out of it, which they have proven on many occasions, and let localities come up with their own policies and procedures. Is that what you're feeling from the governor's commission? And also, since I only get one shot at the apple here, your reconsideration committee, I don't know if that's the same committee that people were in here talking about, where the public has no opportunity for input. At every other city meeting, there is an opportunity for public input, but yet in the library, the only person that can talk is the person who is asking you to reconsider a book. Do you think it's would be in line for you to have public participation in that committee, since that is a library function and probably falls under your guidance?
Holly, you want to weigh in on this?
I do, because a lot of these questions have a legal component, so I'll weigh in on them on that front first. And I'll take the most, I think, important is that right to be heard and to participate as a member of the public. So this is a very interesting topic, because the public has a right to be heard in an open meeting, right? But an individual who's filing an application to have action taken has due process rights. And that means that if they are coming to you and saying, I really want this book removed, and these are the reasons why I want it removed, and this is important to me, they have a right to present whatever reason that may be and whatever evidence they may want to present, and to have that discussion and that back and forth without having the person making the decision weigh the input of the public. So the way to think about this is, if you've been accused of something and you're in a court, and if anybody could walk in the public and start adding to the reasons why or the justifications for one way or the other. So there's actually a potential for public comment in a proceeding like that to derail the proceeding or to
So what I hear you,
due process rights.
so what I hear you saying, Attorney Wells, is that at our planning commission, we should not seek public comment while the commission is coming forward to make a decision. We should only allow the person looking for the waiver or the permission to do that.
It depends on the hat they're wearing, absolutely. So your commission sits in two ways. It sits as a quasi-judicial body, and it sits as a legislative body. When they're sitting, and this is why you should very much appreciate those appointed to the commission, because they have to balance that in a way the council does not generally have to. So sometimes so basically they have to put their hat on. In a quasi-judicial proceeding, they present evidence. That evidence is considered. Sorry. There is an opportunity for, sorry, I've got a little bit of a,
I feel
We all do.
sorry, something going around. But they have an opportunity to make their case and be heard and know that you're going to make the decision based on what they're presenting. And then usually the planner may also present something, and there's this back and forth, and the planner represents the interests of the city, whatever recommendation is made, right? You might have someone who files an opposition in this proceeding, because that due process proceeding allows for that. So they'll file, and then they'll have a certain amount of time to talk, and then they have standing to appeal that decision. So that is set up to make sure they have an opportunity to participate in that that hearing. The public comment that we receive in commission meetings, that is guaranteed under the Open Meetings Act. It's statutory. There's a provision that specifically guarantees the right to be heard. And that is why we have, I mean, hopefully it's not the only reason why, but it's why we have public comment in our meetings as council. And so there are different hats and they have different rights. The other thing is there's a right for it to be public, for example, in a quasi-judicial proceeding. And our meetings are public in the legislative realm for different reasons. So the Planning Commission really is an excellent example of how that works. Now that said, one thing for council to remember is that proceeding, the application process, the reconsideration process, we have policies and procedures that walk the public through that process, but have clear lines that the director has to follow. Because if we fail to follow those, then we are putting the city at risk and the individual's due process rights, depending on how those rights are defined. And they're in this realm, the due process rights are not they're not as significant or protected as, say, someone who's on trial for a criminal case or even a property right under the that come before the Planning Commission. But still, they matter, and I hope that's helpful on that front. The other thing I want to talk about briefly is constitutional rights. And the right to free speech and the banning of books, because we do hear so much rhetoric and a lot of words thrown around. But what the courts are looking at is they're looking at whether or not the book was removed and who it removed it and under what authority. That's the first step. So for example, right now the administration has decided to move all the young adult books into the adult section until they're able to see what's going on in the state of Alaska and where, what the appropriate laws are, what protections are there, and what council wants to do with policies and procedures. That is protected, in my legal opinion, from any action from anyone arguing that by doing that there is a violation of freedom of speech or right to access information, because it's the decision of the administration. Council didn't tell administration to do that. No member of the public no one is forcing that on the director or the library. That's a choice of the administration, which is great. So we don't have that same debate that you have when, for example, a board, commission, body comes in and directs that a book be removed from the library, or the school district is a good example. It's different than the public library and what we're looking at here. So, but freedom of speech and really the freedom to access information has been swirling around libraries and access to books for decades, of course. And right now we see this surge where there are a lot of challenges, not just to the removal of books, but also to the relocation of them. So we have a case in Arkansas that just came out of the federal district court. And so all these cases are in federal court for the most part. And another thing to note, Alaska's judges are fiercely protective of the right to access information and the right to do your own thing. Alaska, that is one thing our courts do more than any jurisdiction I have seen. And so we have a case, for example, that had a drive-in, and they had some, arguably inappropriate movies. And this was in 1970, and the court came back and emphasized the importance, and I think they said, the courts must be ever vigilant to protect the rights of those expounding unpopular views or distributing material thought to be offensive by certain segments of the community. It is these views and these materials that the First Amendment is most often called upon to protect. In such cases, popular disapproval, backed by even the threat of official sanction, may stifle free expression contemporaneously with the utterance itself. So, and that's our court. And so I just want council to understand it is very much a very tangible, real debate. Now, that said, in that very case, they referred to the fact that, not every material can be the material you'd find in a kid's library. So, that one of the things they're looking at is what is the difference between a kid's section in a library versus, something else. But we also know that libraries, public libraries, not school district libraries, these are two different things, are one of the most fiercely protected forums for free speech, protected forums in the United States. And some of our most notable strong cases are coming out of Texas, they're coming out of Arkansas, and injunctions are coming down pretty consistently right now, saying that you cannot use these criminal statutes or you cannot create them to remove books. So whether that is banning a book, or it's just removing it, or even relocating it, that is the debate. And that's the discussion. So I don't know if that helps frame your answers to the question on administrative.
You mentioned the governor's council, the other parts.
Yeah, I did mention the governor's council that you're a part of, and whether or not you were getting a feel that they were going to act on this, or whether they were going to leave that to local.
Sorry.
You're good.
So with that, they haven't been active since I've been on it. I posed the question recently to the governor's council because the letter that went out to all the librarians public librarians in the state, as well as the school librarians. So my thought is just having that group discuss the common language, and give a little bit of guidance to the librarians that are asking a lot of questions right now on the listservs and things like that. It just seemed like a logical place to get some feedback at that level. But I have not heard back from them yet.
I appreciate that. And then the other part of the question was, do you think it's appropriate to have public comment when we're looking at considering or reconsidering books?
So I think that's one of the things we're looking at with policy when we're reconsidering the policy on how to do that and how city council wants to go forward with that. I think there's a lot that goes into that. And so I think people should, but based on what the attorney said, you can be limiting the rights of the person challenging the book as well. So I think we need to look at all aspects of it. And I don't want to make just a spur decision right now and say one way or the other on a specific case or on a specific idea. I think I'll leave it at that. So yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
And Mayor, just really one more thing. So one of the things you could do, for example, if you have a policy and procedure and you're updating that, you could create a process by which there is a public comment on the selections, or the selections are presented to council, on an annual or biannual basis, or whatever it is that allows the public to have comments regarding the selections or the books on that selection, and that, or if you've created a review committee, a library review commission or committee, then you have legislative sessions where the public has an opportunity to come and express their viewpoints. It's just not in the context of an application for specific removal by one applicant, if that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Two parts to this. So
Ian, before you start, you got one question.
it is one question, technically.
Okay.
So on the big aspect here is the obscene material portion of these books that are happening. So when a book is brought forward and you is the committee reading the book or reviewing this portion? A lot of times that seems to be, I know it's not always that, but we're just using Red Hood as the example here because that's really the one that kind of is kicking all of this off. But for instance, that book, I guess where would you find that obscene material line? Because that's that's part of what we're seeing as an issue is, yes, there's this First Amendment right to protect books, and we understand we don't want to ban books. I'm not for, quote, banning books, because everybody has a right to information, though there's a line where, obviously you can't go get certain things from a library because it is obviously obscene material. So where's that line being drawn at?
So, looking at the statute that it was cited here from the Attorney General's office. So yes, the committee did read the whole book, because if you're going to make that determination, the courts have said you have to look at the entire work and see if the entire work meets the definition of obscene based on the entire work. So, for instance, in Red Hood, there's descriptions in there that are probably uncomfortable for a lot of people. If you look at looking at the whole book, and since we're using that as you look at the whole book, is there some kind of redeeming message? Well, I shouldn't even say redeeming. Is there a message there that someone of, say, 15 or 16-year-old could get out of a book like that? Because the parts that were read, a lot of them were in the first 9 or 10 pages. I mean, it's throughout. Don't get me wrong. There's parts throughout the book. There's different parts. Is that the whole reason why the book is done? Is just to string together a bunch of that, or is there a theme to the book? This particular book, the theme, in my opinion, is young ladies that are dating should be careful who they date, because a guy may lie to you. He may tell you, I don't have a sexually transmitted disease. One of the characters did get a sexually transmitted disease because anyway. There's also in the book, it talks about, it's a sci-fi, it's partly fantasy. So there's the individuals in there, these men that are teenagers, older teenagers, 16 to 18 or whatever, when they are turned down by the advancement, when they make an advancement towards a young lady, in 2 different instances, when they're turned down, then the young lady goes out, drives home after a party or whatever, her tire's been slashed, she gets out in the woods, and the individual's transferred into a wolf and tries to kill her. Okay, what I'm saying is the overall theme of a material, to judge if it's obscene or not, it has to be able to look at the whole thing. So for someone, and we have to remember, it's the parent that's letting them decide they're minor to read this book or not. Because they're in the library. Our library rules are the parent is responsible for what they're reading. And if someone can get the message that be careful who you date, they may lie to you, you may die. Now, I don't want to just defend that one book. I mean, I'm just trying to give examples. But right now, there's an article in the newspaper about domestic violence. 43% of females in Alaska suffer domestic violence during their lifetime. Okay, we had, the article cites the murders. There was one here, murder-suicide in Wasilla. There was murder-suicide in Anchorage outside of Walmart. So these are issues that are addressed different ways. Some individuals may not like it addressed that way. Some parents may figure this is the only way my young adult is going to get that message, that not every guy that says, hey, you're cute and I'm a nice guy is that way, a nice guy. So I think the law, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the law on any piece of work is looking at the whole work. And so, anyway, that's the long answer, I guess, now to your question.
I mean, it's the answer to the question. I just find it interesting. If we're looking at a whole instead of going, oh, there's a graphic part in here that could classify as obscene, it shouldn't be here. I mean, that's partly my opinion on it. So what I wanted to get to about this, Madam Mayor, is it sounds like some of the council members want to look at this policy as well, that the current policy that we have in place for reviewing these, it just needs updating is where I'm at. And so I'd be, if the council's up for it, I think we need to do that.
Well, that will be a council decision that will be made amongst yourselves.
And Mayor, one thing to add to that, so if you guys want to look at the policy and amend it or change it, I would recommend council start with the code, because what you want to do, it's not the policy and procedure, because that is not within council's purview. It is the way that the policy and procedure is drafted or reviewed or approved, right, of the selection. So we actually, the council needs to do is change the way it is currently structured, its library review. But one thing I will also add is, so I also read the book from front to back, because it's my job, but I would say, in my opinion, after reviewing all of the cases, this book is squarely within the confines of a protected material under the Constitution. Now, does that mean that when you apply your policies and procedures, you think that that passage warrants moving it to the adult section, or warrants, an applicant requesting its removal? All of those things, that doesn't impact that. But what it means is that the review that was conducted, the quasi-judicial performance of that review, that was legally sound. And that book, which has, which is hundreds of pages, right? You have a very big book that has these excerpts. While those may be obscene to an individual, maybe to everybody in this room, the question really is if you take that as a whole, does it meet the legal definition of obscenity, at least for that piece? And I would say it does not. So that does not mean, and maybe that helps influence what goes into a policy procedure and what council wants to do for its selection policy, because council wants to have more input into that selection. So we just need to build that in so that council can put those tools there if that's the role council wants to take.
Is there any questions for the library director from the two council people on the phone? Colleen?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Nikki?
No.
Thank you. Thank you, Zane. And now I will entertain a motion to enter executive session.
Madam Mayor, I move to enter executive session for confidential attorney-client communications made for the purpose of facilitating the rendition of professional legal services to the city, which is permissible under Wasilla Municipal Code 2.04.080, subsection B5, specifically to hear from the city attorney on the subject of the Wasilla Public Library collection. Those present in the executive session will include the entire city council, the mayor, the city clerk, and the city attorney.
Is there a second?
Second.
One thing I would say is I actually think that we talked a lot about the legal implications of the policies and procedures and how those are structured. So can you hear me now? Okay. So I would say that as far as the legal guidance, one of the things I wanted to talk to council about were the parameters of the legals. And I feel like we did that in open session. So to the extent council has questions that would need an attorney-client response and maybe just wants to have that discussion, that of course, that's very appropriate, but I just want council to know. I gave you my spiel. So.
I second it. Questions?
No, Johnson seconded.
Oh, okay.
So,
Well, there is a motion just to back up. Going in line with what the city attorney said, if there's no objection, we can forget the motions unless there's specific questions that council would like to have with the city attorney, then we will, in my opinion, proceed with the executive session. If not, you want to?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
Mr.
Okay.
Johnson wants to as well.
Okay.
okay. All right. Is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, we are in executive session at 7:14.
Madam Mayor, I move to exit executive session.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been, the motion's been made by Councilmember Graham, seconded by Councilmember Johnson to exit the executive session. Is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, we are out of executive session. Colleen and Nikki, are you on the phone? Colleen, Nikki, are you on the phone?
Forgot to call to connect.
No.
Do you want to just continue? You have a quorum.
Okay.
So just say you.
I'm online.
Oh, okay, there's Colleen. Nikki? Okay, we are on to public hearing. There are two ordinances scheduled for public hearing this evening. Madam Clerk, please read the ordinance by title.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ordinance serial number 2327, amending Wasilla Municipal Code 1012-010 definitions to revise the definition of off-road vehicle to all-purpose vehicle as defined in Title 13 of the Alaska Administrative Code.
The public hearing on ordinance serial number 23...
Nikki Vlog has joined.
The public hearing on ordinance serial number 2327 is now open. Anyone wishing to testify, please come forward and begin by stating your first and last name. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Seeing no one, I will close public hearing and bring it back to the dais. Is there a motion?
So moved by Councilman Johnson.
Is there a second?
Rubeo seconds.
It's been moved by Councilmember Johnson and seconded by Councilmember Rubeo to adopt ordinance serial number 2327. Is there discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, never mind. Is there a objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion passes. Madam Clerk, please read the next ordinance up for public hearing.
Thank you. Ordinance serial number 2328, amending the fiscal year 2024 budget by appropriating $14,000 within the vehicle fund and transferring $14,000 from the general fund administration department for the purchase of a 2024 Chevrolet Tahoe to replace the mayor's vehicle.
The public hearing on ordinance serial number 2328 is now open. Anyone wishing to testify, please come forward and begin by stating your first and last name. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Seeing no one, the public hearing is closed. Is there a motion to adopt ordinance serial number 2328?
Madam Mayor, I move ordinance serial number 2328.
Okay.
Rubeo seconds.
Madam Mayor.
Okay. It's been moved by Councilmember Crofton and seconded by Councilmember Rubio to adopt ordinance serial number 2328. Is there discussion? Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I intend to vote for this, but I'm going to come back to the same discussion that we had before. What's the appropriate vehicle for the job? And how often do we need to replace these vehicles? I don't think the city has a workable, economical way in the administration to determine what vehicles are needed. I noticed the Public Works Director, having driven a Ford Escape for, I think, as long as I've been on the council, which is coming up on 9 years now, is now driving a 4-door, 3/4 ton pickup truck. What's the appropriate vehicle? I mean, how often do we need something the size of a Chevy Tahoe for the mayor to do her business? I mean, and when we transfer these vehicles down, we talked last meeting about, the vehicle then goes to the deputy administrator. The deputy administrator's vehicle goes to other places, which may or may not be used, depending on which vehicle it was. May or may not be used within the city. I just would like to see the city kind of focus on what's the appropriate vehicle to use in the different jobs. You know, I mean, just because we have a little extra money in the budget doesn't mean we need the nicest vehicles out there. We need the appropriate vehicles that we can operate economically and get the job done. You know, it's not, the city doesn't have any money, it's other people's money, and we just need to be cautious of that. And I'm not going to vote against this, but I am going to state my opposition to the way that we're managing our vehicle fleet.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Like Councilman Graham, I'm intended to vote for this. I have a slightly different view than Councilman Graham. I believe that there is probably a need for the mayor to operate a Tahoe, just in view of the image of the city, particularly when selling city services to potential and new clients. So that is the reason that I'm going to vote for it. But like Councilman Graham, I do believe that we need to address this implication in terms of ongoing funding down the line. Are we setting a precedent here where every X number of years we're replacing the vehicle? Are we setting a precedent where the vehicle should be replaced at X mileage? And I think those kind of discussions are probably best done in a budget meeting for the follow-on year. The other issue that I have is, okay, we're taking a fairly expensive vehicle and we're passing that down. What would be its trade-in value on a new vehicle, realizing that if there is a need in another department, wouldn't it be more economical to purchase the appropriate vehicle for that particular use rather than taking an existing Tahoe and moving it down to eventually down the line to the library where it's a very expensive vehicle to operate and a very expensive vehicle to maintain, where maybe the library could deal with a lot smaller car and that becomes really a budget issue down the road. But in either case, I'll support it in this particular case, but I think that we need to have a discussion in the next budget cycle as to how we go forward from here. Thank you.
Ian?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had some questions for our finance department. Jackie, I had talked to earlier today regarding basically the $50,000, because it looked like in the past year we were appropriating $10,000 or budgeting $10,000 to put towards a vehicle because we knew it was going to get replaced at some point in time. But it's been 6 years since we last replaced a vehicle. And so I was kind of curious to see, why we only had 50 versus having 60. Did you ever find that out, Jackie?
Yes. So to the council through the mayor, I did research those transfers, and we did purchase the mayor's current vehicle in FY 2018. As of 2019 and 2020, the transfers into the vehicle fund were $5,000 each. In 21 through 24, it was $10,000 each, coming up to that $50,000 total.
Okay. So I had looked into it, and it sounds like it was approved in 2017, but we didn't get that purchase until 2018 to happen. So.
Yes, and the AM was approved on October 23rd of 2017, which is in our FY 2018.
Gotcha. Okay. I mean, the big thing I think about going forward, I'm for this. It sounds like the vehicle's ready to be replaced. We've got other vehicles that are needing replaced. What I'm thinking, and again, we couldn't fully foresee the drastic increase in the price of vehicles. So I'm wondering if going forward from finance that we might just need to increase that $10,000 again. Instead of it being 10, maybe we're looking at $12,000 yearly to start putting, because we know in probably about 5 years we're going to be looking at another vehicle, and so instead of having 50, hopefully we'll have 60 or potentially even $70,000 depending on how that budget works. It just sounds like we need to keep that in mind, because again, that drastic increase is pretty high, so.
I can tell you that as mayor, it don't matter if it's 3 o'clock in the morning and it's blowing hell balls or whatever it's doing. If we have an emergency, I have to go. And I do go. So if we have got severe weather conditions and the roads are horrible and whatever, you've got to have a vehicle that will get you to from point A to point B where you need to be. And also, when we have dignitaries come to town, I have had Dan Sullivan, Senator Dan Sullivan, I have had Senator Murkowski, I have had the governor, and some of his commissioners and whatever, that we take around town to show them, our town, what we need. And that goes a long way. I hijacked Senator Murkowski and took her to the airport, and so, and also by the sewer plant. And it helped because she gave us money to start the upgrade on the sewer plant. So anyway, you've got to have, when you are transporting dignitaries, Wasilla is not Podunk anymore. We are an urban first-class city, and we are going to put our best foot forward. So that means we're going to put lipstick on the pig. And with this car, you know, and also before my administration, that what they had done was replace the vehicle every 4 years. And it may not be written anywhere, but they were always shuffled down. My vehicle that I'm driving today will go to the deputy administrator. The vehicle that the deputy administrator is driving is a, what is it, Eric? A 2000 and...
It's a 2008 Tahoe.
A 2008 Tahoe. That's what she's driving. And it's got to where it breaks down quite often. So the one that she's driving will go to the library. Eric?
I'd like to correct Councilman Graham. The four-door F-350 is my personal vehicle. I do not take a company vehicle home. So I do.
Parked in your slot has Wasilla stickers on the side.
That's not my vehicle. That's our utility supervisor's work vehicle. Does not take home either.
Good vehicle for him.
So, anyway, it's not that we are trying to be frivolous. We are trying to be responsible with the citizens' money. But this has been put in place. It was here when former Mayor Cottle got the vehicle I'm driving today. 4 years before that, it was a new vehicle. So that's the way it is.
So just as a point of information, Madam Mayor, prior to the last vehicle replacement, the deputy administrator's vehicle went to surplus and went to auction. The one that the library currently has is the first one that the library has had because a decision was made not to send it to auction for whatever reason. But so there has never been an issue, I don't think, with passing the mayor's vehicle down to the deputy administrator. It's what happens to that other vehicle, which is more often than not used in many cases for weeks at a time. What happens there? So the history isn't there, but. And I'm not saying we solve this tonight. I'm just saying we should take a look at our fleet management policy.
All right. Is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion passes. Okay. We are now at persons to be heard, a time for members of the public to share their views with the council. This is not a question and answer period or a time for dialogue. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. And your issues may be referred to administration and taken under advisement by the council or the administration. And the first one is Tom Stearns.
Of course.
Good evening. My name is Tom Stearns. I'm the Senior Ambassador for the Wasilla Area Seniors Incorporated. If you were not at Wasilla on the day before Thanksgiving, you missed a great meal. The place was packed. In fact, we had to set up more tables so that we could feed all the people that were there. But it was a great meal. My oh my, it's pie is over. Okay? If you missed it, sorry, you'll have to wait till next year. But we did raise about $19,000, which was the whole point of the exercise, and that means that we will be able to feed more seniors. We have some upcoming events. Well, we have one upcoming event, which is our Wasilla Christmas Giving. Each year, on just before Christmas, the last day before Christmas, we have a party at Wasilla, and we have all these bags that have been put together, and we give them to seniors. And a couple of days before that, we'll do the same thing with the Meals on Wheels. Their drivers will bring those things out to them. But we need some help. We need some help with the things that go in the bags. And so what we're looking for, and you should have one of these on your desk there, blankets, towels, hand soap, the pump style, warm socks and warm hats, individual snacks, cheese crackers, and other items to donate. I got a jump on that. I went and I did that on Black Friday, and I got all my stuff for half price. And so let's see, and then our healthy aging program. Don't forget that this is the time of year that we gain a lot of weight. So you need to come to our healthy aging program in our gym so that you can work some of that off. And so we'd and remember, all our aging programs are senior centric. And then we'd invite you to come and visit us during the holidays. We have young people from the outside come in and sing songs and do things for seniors. And so it's just a fun time, and we would love to see you come and enjoy that with us. Thank you.
Jackie, go forth. Please begin by stating your first and last name, and your comments are limited to 3 minutes.
Mayor and City Council, thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you. My name is Jackie Goforth. I think somebody is forgetting that there is a law on the books from the Supreme Court. It's called Miller versus California, 1973. And it says in there, and it has stood for 50 years, that obscenity is not protected speech under the First Amendment. Period. Now, I'm going to do an analogy. Let's say you have a 13-year-old. They're in middle school. I know what they're like. I've raised 6 kids. They really want to be grown up. They want to be in charge of their life. They want to make decisions. They want to move away from kids' movies and children's books, you know. They really want to go see a PG-rated movie. It's called Red Hood. It looks cool. It's about a female werewolf hunter. You research it. Everything looks good. Everybody has great things to say about it. The educators, the Hollywood talking heads, the review sites, the theater sales are good, the moviegoers are gushing, but you're an irresponsible parent. You try to control what your child sees and does online. You've researched with fightthenewdrug.org. It's a site about the harmful effects of porn, and it uses only science, facts, and personal experiences. And you've looked at all the sites about what porn can do. But you also know there's obscene, indecent material in movies. That's why you'd never let your child go see a PG, an R, or an NC-17 movie, or a PG-13, not at this age. Heck, you're leery unless you've got first-hand knowledge. So Red Hood is in the PG. Everything looks good, so you tell your child they can go. But you're going to go with them. They don't want you sitting by them, though. No. They're with their other friends. They don't want to be near their parent. So you say, okay, you'll be back a few rows covering. All right. Well, the movie starts okay. It's not something you wanted to see, so your mind starts wandering. And you really don't want to pay any attention, and all of a sudden, you are not going to tell your grandmother about the feel of James's mouth between your legs. You are not going to tell her about your orgasm in the old blue wagon, or about the moonbeam that illuminated his face, just as he looked up to see your pleasure on your face, and showing you your blood on his. You're not quick enough to jump up and shield your child. Or imagine, you went to get popcorn during that scene. All of a sudden, some of the parents you came with are leaving the theater. Some are in shock and some are gagging. You know why? You go to try and find out where your child is sitting, but the horse has already left the barn. It's way too late now. Your child has lost their innocence. That's the problem with these books. There's no warning on them. Parents don't know. They can be sitting right beside them reading it, and it's too late once they've seen it. That's the problem. And it isn't my call, it's the parents. It's the parents' right and the responsibility. And if anybody thinks that that part is not obscene, raise your hand. There you go. Thank you.
There you go.
No comment and no actions from the audience. Karen Lewis. Please begin by saying your first and last names. You're limited to 3 minutes.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. My name is Karen Lewis, and I was going to go through these and just give you a little bit about each of them, some of these obscene materials in the Wasilla Library. However, I did have a little talk with Zane. It was actually a big talk. And I was contesting this identical one. I mean, all of these should be contested, but this one I already did. I talked with them, and they decided they were going to keep it in the YA, or the 14, 15, 16, 17. Are 15, 14, are these guys adults? Do you consider them adults? 14, 15, 16? Why do they market young adults? Something to think about. That should be changed. Okay, so in identical, identical's about two identical twins. And one of them is molested by their father. And this is what it says. Someone had closed the curtain. Kaylee was scared. I tried to tell her not to worry, but just then Daddy burst through the door. I closed my eyes tight, made myself no more than a shadow. Something about him was different. I didn't want that something to find me. I cracked my eyes just a slit as he sat on Kaylee's bed, pulled her into his lap. He smelled of brute and wild turkey, his peculiar potpourri. I love you so much, my little flower. Daddy needs something from my girl, my sweet rose. Will you give it to me? I wanted to be his little flower. I would have given my daddy anything. What did he want from Kaylee? She laid her head on his chest. What? I want you to see something that proves how much I love you. This is only for you, Kaylee girl. He lifted her gently, sat her down on the bed beside him, then he opened the snaps on the fly of his flannel pajamas. It stood up stiff as a stalagmite. See how much Daddy loves you? Show me you love me too. Touch it. He closed her hand around it. I know it sounds bad, but I wanted to touch it too. I didn't know what it meant, only that it made Daddy happy. I wanted to make him happy too. That's right. His voice rocked in rhythm with his body. Oh yes, my Kaylee loves me, my little flower. When Daddy finished, he burrowed his face into Kaylee's hair and wept, confused at his tears and at the sticky stuff icing her hands. Still, Kaylee pleaded, Don't cry, Daddy. What's the matter? Didn't I love you good enough? Yes, you loved me good enough, so very good. But it's our secret, okay? Because if anyone knew how much you loved me, they'd be jealous. Now, Kaylee was really confused. Can I tell Mama our secret? No, especially not Mama. She'd get mad because she doesn't love me like you. She might even go away. You don't want that, do you? So we in Ephesians chapter 6:12, it says, we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and the rulers of the darkness of this world and spiritual wickedness in high places. And that's what we're dealing with. Make a committee. Don't listen to the attorney. Make a committee. Pardon. Jeez.
Chris Tyree. Please begin your testimony by stating your first and last name. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Chris Tyree, and the first thing I'd like to say is, if the library can censor me, they can censor the books. One day I was in the library asking for a copy of the 1871 Organic Act. And I was talking to one lady, and then another one, a young one, interferes and says, oh, I know what she wants, blah, blah, blah. So she types, and she gives me what I don't want. She wanted me out of there because she didn't want me to talk about the 1871 Act, which made our country a corporation. She didn't want me talking about that in front of everybody. But it's okay to have naked pictures of people in books. That's wrong. And if you read the RICO law, you will see that if there's any damage done to these kids, they can get compensation in the future. I want every one of the people's names that are giving these books to these children, because if any of them are ever destroyed mentally, they can go after these people that are giving them the books. Because this is wrong. Children don't need that. You're taking away their innocence. You're taking away their naivety. You're doing things that are totally the opposite of what an adult is supposed to do for a child. It's a parent's right to teach the child sex, not the librarians. And does that man that talked for the library, does he have any children? He doesn't look like he has any children. So, why would he be all okay about all this? If he had children, maybe he'd think different. But anyways, I would suggest that you guys read the RICO law, because these people not only are violating what Treg Taylor, but they're also violating this. And if they can't work in the future, if they can't buy property in the future, if they're mentally unstable, the people that okayed all of this will be liable for it. But of course, when you're a government servant and you belong to the club, none of you will probably get in trouble, which is really sad. In the meantime, the children are destroyed, and that's wrong. And I think you guys need to think about this, and you do need to make a committee for the library without a bunch of librarians. Yes. Because the librarians are the ones who want this. And some of them don't even have kids probably either. Or if they do they care? But anyways, I think the RICO law is very much in effect, and I think it should be used against them. If it was us, we'd be arrested.
Okay. Next is Mary Robinson. Please begin your testimony by stating your first and last name, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor Ledford, City Council staff. My name is Mary Robinson, and I am a City of Wasilla resident. And I'm going to take part of my 3 minutes, and I just want to I already spoke to the Public Works Director. I want to say that the city has done a great job. I've been able to walk a couple places with all the snow, and I am old school, and I love cheerful Christmas things, and thank you for putting those up. So thank you for that. So in all honesty, I just thank you for keeping the snow under control, and thank you for putting up the cheerful Christmas decorations. So I was going to say so many different things, but lucky you're going to get to see me a few more times over the next couple months. We're going to keep it short and sweet tonight. So as everyone knows now, the Attorney General, Treg Taylor, sent out several letters November 16th. And in part of the letter, he says, whether or not there has been a violation of the law will always be a fact-specific inquiry. So these letters do not cast any blame. So I am not a patient person, as any of my ex-husbands will tell you, but I'm going to let this do the process, and I'll speak occasionally on it. I was glad to see that he also did refer to the Alaska Safe Children's Act, which includes Bree's Law and Aaron's Law, teaches about measures to prevent and stop dating, violence, and abuse, community resources available to victims, characteristics of healthy relationships, so that's good. Also talks about some of the curriculum instruction, addresses violence, bullying, unsafe sexual behavior, substance abuse. But what I want to talk about for a few minutes before my time is up is how the library came to be. I don't know that everyone is aware, and I'm not going to be able to cover all the history, but countless hours of dedicated service, tenacity, optimism, and perseverance. I am on the Friends of the Wasilla board and have been for about 15 years. And I had the great good luck to meet people that are now no longer with us, and they worked for decades to get a new library. And these are the people that have worked towards the new library and have passed. Well, I guess I'm running out of time. But Mary Qualheim, Margaret Heaven, Julie Eade, Jan Lucas, Howard Nugent, Barbara Judd, Pam Okalander, Bert Cottle are some of the people that worked very, very hard to build this library. And if you think that any of them would sanction having quote-unquote obscene materials in the library, then you didn't know any of them. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
And next we have Ron Huxty, and I apologize if I butchered your name.
I know it's pretty tough. It's Huck Step. Ron Huck
Steph, okay. You have 3 minutes, and if you'll start by stating your first and last name.
I did. Ron Huckstep.
Okay.
So, okay. We got a couple items. Pornographic materials are available and have been available in private stores and bookstores and stuff ever since I was a little kid. I mean, there was a place, you know, I grew up in Idaho, in Boise, and there was one place in Garden City because that was like the bad spot of town, and there was bookstores there for porn. Nowhere else. Not in the public libraries, nowhere. Now, because pornography is illegal to be distributed, it can be purchased wherever they want by somebody else. It can be self-published and sold. You don't have to go through a library to get it. You can order it online. You don't need the public library to have these products in them to make them available to people. It's available all over, everywhere. It doesn't need to be in our public library that is for our kids and for the betterment of our society, not for the degradation. Now, they talked about the sewer system. Do you guys know where the sewer system came from for the city of Wasilla? Yeah, it was given to the city of Wasilla so that they could install it and determine how to make it work because it was at full capacity when it was received. Now, how much money has been put into the public works process to keep this sewer system working that isn't even adequate or wasn't adequate when it was installed? There's a lot of stuff that this city council does that is not for the betterment of the people. What about, you know, having to get the money from FEMA or something? I mean, can we take care of our own? You guys got the most flipping money in the state from city taxes. The sales tax in Wasilla was for the police department. That's how they sold getting that sales tax passed by the people. They said it will only be used for the police department. Well, the city saw how much money the sales department, the sales tax brought in, so they took that money away, the sales tax. Now the cops are being paid by the property taxes that the city receives, and the taxes that the sales taxes they receive. The government now has to do whatever they want with it. So, you guys got problems, and you need to work on them, and it isn't recent. So. Correct something in
Next up is Jeannie Trzynski. Begin your testimony by stating your first, last name. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Jeannie Trzynski, President, Friends of Wasilla Library. First, I just want to clarify. I've only been involved in this since 2001, volunteering for the library. I'm pretty sure the library's never had a car. I think we're talking about the museum has a car. I don't think the library has a car.
The library museum share.
I never knew that. I've never seen a librarian drive a car. That's the city car. But that's awesome. Okay, so some activities have been going on at the Wasilla Library. 729 young people between kindergarten and 12th grade entered into our bookmark contest. This is an annual contest we've had for about 4 years now. The kids love this contest. They submit these really awesome drawings, and then the staff picks the winners, and the winners get published, and then we give away the bookmark. So 729 is a lot of drawings to choose from, so it's a very well-loved program. We also have coming up the Friends of the Library next Thursday, December 7th, and I'll give these to Jamie for you, our silent auction. We received several books donated from the Rasmussen Library that used to be in Anchorage, and they donated them, and if we could use them in the collection or replace ones in the collection that were similar, we did. Otherwise, the leftover ones will be silent auctioning off. We did one auction last year, and now we have the rest of the books. Aaron Leggett, the curator of the Alaska History and Culture at the Anchorage Museum, will be our guest speaker, and that will be from 6 to 7 on Thursday, December 7th. So we're super excited about that program. Also, we have, let's see, what else? On December 16th, which is a Saturday from 1 to 2:30, we'll have another Story Walk event. We're going to have the Story Walk will be the night before Christmas. We're going to have hot chocolate and cookie decorating, and we have some elves coming, and possibly another guest will be there with the elves, so we're really excited about that. Our last Story Walk event was really fun. We just, as always, have lots of things going on at the library. The story times have begun again. This last story time, we had 50 participants. We've been ranging between 30 and 40. Usually this time of the year it slows down a bit. It's hard for people to get their kids into the cars when it's so cold and miserable. But then as the spring comes, it just increases and increases until we get to those numbers in the 90s like we shared with you last year that happened repeatedly. So thank you very much. Lots of great things, as always, going on at the library. Thank you.
Teresa, and I'm not going to attempt your last name.
Oh, it's me.
Please begin your testimony with your first and last name, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Teresa Emlock. Thanks so much for doing this. It's, I'm sure, hard to serve us all. So why I wanted to specifically come here and talk to you was I was concerned about what is happening at our library. I've got 3 children. And the other day I was sliding on the internet and I stumbled upon this KGB defector. And he talks about ideological subversion. And it's the slow process of change the perception of the reality of every American to such an extent that despite the abundance of the information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions themselves in the interest of defending themselves, their family, their community, their nation. In other words, it's like a form of brainwashing. And the area of application of subversion is education. So rather than learning something constructive and pragmatic, like mathematics, foreign language, or chemistry, they teach urban warfare, home economy, and they focus on your sexuality. Now this is from a KGB defector that specifically was warning America of how we are demoralizing ourselves. And I'm asking, by focusing on sexuality with these young minds, are we exploiting not only their minds, but also ruining America? So my hope is we encourage them and teach moral standards. And I appreciate you being here and listening to my sharing.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that has not spoken that would like to speak? Come forward, state your first and last name. You have 3 minutes.
I'm Mary Ravetta, and it's R-A-V as in Victor E-T-T-A. I live at Lucille and Selden in the borough here. And I just moved here 2 years ago. And I do like it here quite a bit. It's quite conservative, and I wanted that. And I am concerned about the books, though. I have a master's in psychology, and I also retired as an engineer, so I went to Boeing and retired there with 18 years. So I had a good career, and I've also taught, substitute teach at the LA Unified School District. So I've seen a lot there that was not healthy. And what I'm concerned about is the kids being exposed to the sexual material. I have a background where it took me 13 years in sexual repair type groups and many, many years of therapy. And I was exposed to sexual material. My dad was bringing some pornography home to dispose of it for his coworker, and my sister and I got into the vehicle and was exposed to the material. This definitely was a contribution to a brokenness in my my psyche, where it caused me much brokenness, where I had to take 13 years to work through these issues, and I don't want to be part of developing that in kids, and I want to do whatever I can do to push back on that happening to the kids. I think it's best for all of us to keep our kids protected from harm, from losing their innocence. So I have experience, and then I have an education in it as well, so I do recognize that it's not healthy. It creates a split where you can live two double lives and you can have a healthy marriage, with your spouse, but yet you have affairs on them, and this is that split and other types of brokenness that can develop out of that sexual brokenness that comes. That's the fruit that comes out of being broken in that way. So to have community that is developed productive. I took many, many years to do recovery to help out those areas, and I was diligent to work through a good career and be good about it, but not everyone can do that, so
Thank you.
thank you.
Is there anyone else? Seeing none, I'll close public. Please begin your testimony by stating your first and last name. You've got 3
My name
minutes.
is Linda Spone. Let's see here, I was just taking a few notes. Let me just go over here. Okay, taxpayer. So one of the guidelines for picking library books by the library board, the library director said, is if there's any good in the book. But so if it's my understanding, if it's 40 to 50% of the content is sexually questionable, it's still okay to be in the library. So I would throw out all those guidelines and make up new guidelines. There should be no pornographic, perverted material in our taxpayer-funded libraries. I don't want to pay for this stuff. If I want ice cream, I don't go to the government and say, give me ice cream. I don't go to the taxpayers and say, buy me ice cream. I don't go to my neighbors and say, you have to buy me ice cream, or else it's against my rights, it's against my First Amendment, it's against, you're way out of line on to say, the city attorney says you should have access to anything, do your own thing. And I'm all for that. You go do your own thing, have access to anything you want. But these are public, taxpayer-funded libraries. All this stuff that's questionable is out there all over. It's available. You can get it easily. But we don't want to pay for it in our taxpayer-funded libraries. We don't want to fund that. It's our money. I used to take my kids to the library, my first two children, go to the library, get stacks of books, take them home and read them. Now, when I started going with my third child, we were looking for some books that were no longer there, and we had to ask about, no, we don't carry those anymore. We're talking really good. They had several sets of Ralph Moody's, basically Life. It was historical fiction, and they were in the kids section, and they're gone. Lois Lenski books, they're gone. They're all historical fiction. You're taking good books out of the library and putting smut in.
Is there anyone else? Seeing no one, I'll close public comment. We are now at the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, please read the items for approval under the consent agenda by title.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have the regular meeting minutes, November 13th, 2023. Two introductions, recommended public hearing date, December 11, 2023. The first, ordinance serial number 2329, amending the fiscal year 2024 budget by accepting and appropriating a Federal Aviation Administration grant in the amount of $431,200 for the master plan Phase 2 at the Wasilla Municipal Airport. Secondly, ordinance serial number 2330, amending the fiscal year 2024 budget by appropriating $800,000 from the FEMA Spruce Hazard Mitigation Project funds for replacement of the Spruce Water Tower generator. Two resolutions still on the consent agenda. The first is resolution serial number 2342, accepting a Matanuska-Susitna Borough grant in the amount of $1,865,332.74 for the Palmer-Wasilla Water System Interconnect. Secondly, resolution serial number 2343, accepting a Matanuska-Susitna Borough grant in the amount of $2,142,045 for the Old Matt Road Booster and PRV station. And that's it, Madam Mayor. The other items were pulled.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
So moved by Councilman Johnson.
Is there a second?
Second by Rubeo.
It's been moved by Councilmember Johnson and seconded by Councilmember Rubio to approve the consent agenda as read. Is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved. And we are to unfinished business. The motion to adopt...
Solon Leonard
The motion to...
has left.
The motion to adopt resolution serial number 2338 is on the floor. Is there discussion? Mr. Graham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We decided as a council at the last meeting to push these forward to this meeting so we could get a little bit more information on some of these and some of these items. And currently, the one that we're looking at is City of Wasilla's legislative priorities for calendar year 2024. Those priorities that I'd like to get more information on is the Palmer-Wasilla Water Interconnect Project. Talks about requesting $3 million. In the packet today, there's about $6 million, $6.5 million being allocated towards that. The number has always been bandied around at $3 million in the 6 months or so that we've been talking about this project. So I'm just kind of curious, I mean, are we looking for an additional $3 million? And since this is an interconnect project between Palmer and Wasilla, what is Palmer's buy-in to this? So I know the deputy administrator is not here today, but perhaps someone could speak to that.
Public Works, Eric.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So, the genesis of the project was to augment both water systems, to lean on each other in case of emergency. What we've been working through with the active legislation is receiving a grant from the borough, additional ARPA funds that they had set aside for this. They are not in the utility business, so they're not capable of facilitating that project, and Palmer did not feel they had the capacity, and we frankly are at the higher risk of needing support for water. So that's why we through the collaboration with the borough and the city of Palmer, have taken the lead on receiving those grant funds that we just discussed. Those grant funds are identified for planning and design, selecting a design consultant, and getting to 35%. This is an unusually large capital project for both Wasilla and Palmer, so these numbers are larger than we're used to seeing, but it's a very large capital project that will need more funding for construction. So the funds that have been authorized and received through the legislation moments ago is anticipated to get us into design, but it will not complete design and it will not complete construction. The planning level document that was created by HDL, our consultant, had two alternative alignments. They're in the $20 million construction range. If we just stay with alignment number 2, which is the shorter connection, alignment number 1 is much larger, but it has some simplicity to it for mechanical pumping and pressure reduction. Part of the monies that were just appropriated will also support in the larger planning for higher density housing. And that's why the borough is excited to be a partner, because while they don't have utilities, they are very interested in increasing density where possible. And looking at those two alternatives with us will allow them to possibly support us in higher density housing on one of the two corridors as that planning process goes ahead. So they have started using their internal GIS, land mapping, and they don't have a planning department, but their long-term planning department into identifying developable parcels along the two alternative routes that may lend themselves to substantial development in the future that would help with higher density requests within the borough. Does that will answer your question, Mr. Graham?
Yes, it was. People don't have any other questions on that particular item, I can move to another one.
Okay. Move on.
Okay, so the next item, the $2 million for Lake Lucille tank replacement, talking about septic tanks. So it talks that this project creates an inventory and replacement schedule. Then later it says during the summer of 2023, the city created an inventory of tanks and a replacement schedule. So this project isn't about the inventory and replacement schedule. This is to figure out how to fund the schedule. Is that, I think it's just written up in a way such that it's not clear that this for actually for construction.
Yeah, I apologize. The verb should have been, it utilizes the schedule that we've created. So this is funding tanks that we've identified as needing to be replaced. So we've already started the inventory. There is more inventory that needs to be done. We start with a small scale of scope of work, but we know from what we found this summer, there are many more tanks out there that need to be inventoried, and that the funding amount is roughly $25,000 per tank on average, which is a pretty accurate number for tank replacements today.
And these are tanks that the city owns, or these are tanks on private property?
Yeah, so that is probably something that most don't realize about our sewer system. When the STEP system was created in the 80s, the city took ownership of all the tanks. So the homeowner owns the pipe that discharges into the tank, and the city owns everything beyond that. With the caveat, the homeowner pays the electrical bill for the pumping of their sewage. As tanks that have a lifespan of 25 years begin to fail, it falls solely on the city.
Okay. May I move to the next item?
Sure.
Okay. The next item, $5 million pavement preservation program. Now, for several years, we've allocated $1 million a year to pave city streets, and in some case to reclaim paved areas where the pavement has failed. And here it doesn't talk about when this $5 million will be spent. Are we talking about continuing our funding, which the city has done for several years, of $1 million for paving unpaved roads? Is this in addition to that, or is this to replace that money? So are we looking at $2 million a year for the next 5 years if the city continues to do, what, I'm not quite sure what the timeline is here.
So the timeline of the trade-off, or the handoff, if you will, from paving unpaved streets and falling back to repair streets, there probably will be a year of overlap. This is a document to illustrate the need to an outside entity. So while you know that we've been funding years past for paving, this is a document to take to outside entities to say, look, we have this active program of paving unpaved streets. We do need support in going back and repairing currently paved streets. So that's kind of a budgetary question into the future. I personally would expect we'll have some overlap soon. There are roads like Lucille and Lucas that are okay, but they need some rehab money put into them now before they get so bad that people start calling them church road.
And since we're calling this a legislative priority, so we're going to the legislature for this, so are we saying we need this money to work on the roads that you have turned over to us that used to be state roads, or is this just in general, we want $5 million for paving?
Well, I don't think we would limit ourselves. It is a point to make that we are taking on state roads, so that's why we listed Cruzy, Lucille, Clap. You know, they built them, and they're, you know, to walk away is not a supportive measure. I think in general for these items, it's for us to have an elevator pitch to the different bodies that have funding available to say, this is what we've talked about, these are on our radars. You know, please support us in any way, and it allows our representatives to say, oh, I'm on a committee that has that kind of power. I could help you with this or that. You know, if there's an EPA nexus, oh, I know of a program that we could help with tanks around Lake Lucille. So it will feel a little bit nebulous, or maybe not nebulous, across the board. It's going to touch many different types of infrastructure because we don't know from any moment what representative has a sway in what project category. So we're trying to have options for support because we don't expect all of these to be funded. Any one of these being funded would be a valuable win for the city's progress. So you'll see many options listed out here as priorities.
Move on to the next one, $3 million.
Stu, wait a minute, if you would please. If you go back to and look at your agenda, there's another resolution of, the resolution that we are on now is the City of Wasilla's legislative priorities.
And I'm reading from your document here.
Wait a minute, I know you are. But, and then we have, the next resolution is the federal, and then the next one is state. So, Eric, my question to you is, on this $5 million pavement preservation, is that because it says this project is included in the state Alaska CAPS portal. So is it actually cities, or is this a state priority that we're?
I believe, I worked on this with Deputy Administrator Nygaard. I believe that is an overlap. So the way her memo is outlined is to follow the order of the three.
Of the agenda?
Of the agenda, correct. But there are a few projects that overlap, and so that's just a carryover, just to show that it's being shared with multiple agencies.
Okay.
So the next one is the $3 million in recreation upgrades to meet ADA requirements. And maybe the attorney would have to weigh in on this, but is there a timeline where we have to become ADA compliant with the parks, trails, and so on and so forth? And if we decide not to do that, we decide not to upgrade Lucille Park and somebody gets injured or something like that, is there some liability to the city because we haven't expended the funds to complete the upgrade? I mean, most things when it comes to ADA, it's like, well, when you get a permit, well, guess what? Now you got to become ADA compliant. I don't know if it's the same with Parks and Recreation. I mean, is this something that we have to do by a certain time, or is this something that we want to do, and in case we start doing something, we need to make sure that it's compliant?
Was that a legal question, or?
I don't have any idea. You're the one asking for $3 million.
So there are always risks that we should try to address. I've heard of entities filing lawsuits on very small concerns. So it's a point to be understood that our facilities are due for some upgrades, and I think there are some liability risks that we should address. So I don't know of any active lawsuits, but it does happen. So
you're not aware of any timeline where we would have to have these completed?
I have not been approached by any entity that has a timeline. It's just a risk that municipalities across the nation face.
Thank you. And the last one, the $75,000 retention and recruitment program. Are we hiring a contractor to do this? Or are we just, where's the $75,000 going?
That's what I'm least prepared to speak on. That is what I understand is how it's explained. The program focused on increasing retention. It's based on market studies, based on discussions with the new HR manager.
And we already have an HR department that is doing this actively. I'm just curious where this extra $75,000 is going. I'm not opposed to finding ways to retain people. I think that's a great idea, but
the HR manager, and Eric helped me with the numbers, but our turnover in the first 5 years is like 50-some%. Or Ted, hit me out here.
Excuse me, Mayor. I believe that I had a quick look at the graph. It's approximately 56% turnover within the first 5 years. So, and most organizations right now are facing huge turnovers due to, we all know the labor market has shifted and changed dramatically. That
didn't we just pay $30,000 2 years ago for a salary study?
We did. And the salary study was done comparing us to Palmer, Seward, the other small cities or in the state. But now, we're not, as my term goes, we're not podunk anymore. So we are competing against the hospital. We're competing against the large, like Matsu Health Foundation. That's who we're competing against for employees. So we've got to figure out, that's what this program is about, to figure out how we can go about competing with these other entities on and level the playing field. Ian.
Madam Mayor, I talked with our deputy administrator about this one as well, and that's basically what she said as well, is that basically we're not competing against we're more so competing against private organizations now when it comes to our employees that we're trying to retain, which puts us, it's a hard place to be.
Nikki Vila has left.
And so I don't know if she's intending to do another study or if she just wanted to put more money into marketing to get better employees or just find a way. Because I know part of this also, we have something on ML about this as well that we're trying to get forward to essentially just say, hey, we need a way to retain people better. And that's one thing I didn't fully understand either, was what do we tend to do with the $75,000? But I know that's our problem.
It is a study about what these larger organizations and private entity, what are they doing? And how do we compare to them? And so we got to have a professional to come in and say, okay, A is A and B is B. So that's what your 75,000 is going for.
That's all the questions I had on, what do we got, Resolution 2338?
Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Maybe this would go to our Public Works again. The $750 for the water and wastewater master plan, is this for designing it? Is this the initial study? What does that $750,000 get us?
Thank you for that question. So this would take the old study and update it. So it would be a high-level planning document that evaluates what's changed since the last study from 2000, what was anticipated correctly, what never happened, or evaluates what changed in the last 20 years, and then takes into account the new expansion that we see on KGB and other areas around us, and would look to the future and propose a plan to design, build, and fund what we need to move into the next 20 years. So it's very, very forward-looking planning document.
I just want to say how important this item is, I think, on our agenda. As we know, our water and sewer are a concern of the cities right now, our infrastructure. We even had a member of the public come forward to make some comments tonight about it. I think this is something that, again, this is just more of an outward document than an internal document. But I really appreciate that item on there.
Okay, further discussion on resolution serial number 2338. Hearing none, is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, it passes. And we are on to resolution serial number 23-39. Is there a motion?
It's on the floor, Madam.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's already on the floor. Is there a discussion?
Madam Mayor, a couple questions on specific things here. The $3.9 million to upgrade sewer infrastructure. Once again, we're talking about septic tanks. So this this funding request would stand separate from what we had just talked about, the Lake Lucille project, or so this would be, if the city funds the Lake Lucille project, because that's an internal thing, then this $3.9 million would be used elsewhere? Is that the intent?
That's an excellent question. I would say that you'll see, in general, the projects on the federal request are much larger than the local. So, no, this is in addition to, this would include the Lake Lucille. It's not so specific as an area. A $2 million project is almost not large enough for the federal side of things. So to ask for more money would mean we would move broader than Lake Lucille, and it would address even more tanks outside of just Lake Lucille. So imagine Lake Lucille plus another $1.9 million in requested funding.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And that was my only question on that one, other than the Homer Wasilla Water Interconnect project, which I think you answered sufficiently during the.
You'll find out in some of these resolutions they overlap.
Right.
Because as you go from asking it to the state, you're asking for $2 million, and when you go to feds, you're asking for 3.9, and you're hoping you'll get one or the other. So, Ian.
Again, back to Public Works here. Same topic there. The polyethylene and concrete tanks. Just being a real estate agent that has dealt with many failed septic systems here recently, there are other concerns. I mean, there's the three different main types. Obviously they're all addressed right here, all with their own pros and cons. Do the pros of those two types of tanks outweigh the pros of a steel tank in all of our situations? because I know, for instance, when we get closer to bodies of water, we have to move away from steel. They obviously rust. But the problem with the polyethylene tanks is that you cannot bury them super far underground, otherwise the weight of the ground crushes them. To bury them higher, so you have to insulate them. There's other problems. So what was the reasoning behind moving that direction?
Yeah, actually, that's a great point. For everyone in the room, do not buy tanks from Home Depot. They will not bury the right depth. And so when we say polyethylene tanks, they are structurally designed to have the correct bury depth. And so the tanks that we spec are designed and specified for the lifespan that we need, which is on the order of 50 years. 25 years for a coated tank is not a fiscally wise decision for a city. And one of the reasons that we want to look to long-term is sometimes you cannot put the tank back in the same spot. And now, do you have developable space on a lot? If you don't know if you can put a second tank in the future, you need to put a tank in with a lifespan that will get you twice as long. 50 years is what we're going for. So, for instance, on high water tables, you can use polyethylene if you weigh it down, or we might move to concrete for that. And so it's just being specific with the possible funding agents like EPA, that we are looking for long lifespans so that we impact our community and our budget as little as possible. A little bit more expensive of a tank now is worth it 50 years in the future because you've put that energy and time and money into a properly designed tank.
Madam Mayor, follow up to that. And then the goal between this would be to basically put in tanks that we're not needing to replace here soon, because the ultimate goal is that when we do need to come in and replace these tanks again, we're not putting a tank in, we're putting it in a direct line to a proper sewer system. Would that be the master plan in this situation here? Is that really the end goal?
Unfortunately, due to the topography of the city, while we would like to have facilities that are co-located, so maybe more streets that have a centralized lift station in the cul-de-sac or something like that, for the most part, we will not be able to get away from individual lift stations, especially in areas such as Lake Lucille where everyone's septic tank is down by the lake. We don't have gravity on our side, and so we're going to have these individual systems. There are new systems, like most of Wazi was actually designed with a central lift station, so their little neighborhood streets drain to a center tank, and there's only one lift station there. So that's the ultimate design, is to have infrastructure that relates to the topography of the neighborhood and reduces the number of lift stations that we need. But there are many areas in the city where we just cannot get around having independent lift stations, but we will reduce those as often as we can.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Johnson.
Madam Mayor, Director, the 10 million for the Wasilla Airport is for a commercial-sized aviation center. So are we talking like a terminal building or something like that, or is it just a hangar? What's the thinking there?
Sure. Last year, you may recall that we applied for a federal grant that created a multi-use aviation center. And so that design had hangar space, it had a pilot's lounge, it had public meeting rooms, it had training rooms, it had a use case that touched a bunch of federal funding opportunities. And so this is a carryover to that. So it would very much align with the grant that we applied for last year that has we're calling it aviation center because it would be useful for multiple agencies, multiple uses at the airport.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion passes. We are on to state legislative priorities. Is there discussion? Mr. Graham?
Thank you, ma'am. First, I'm looking at the first one, 1.5 million water and wastewater treatment upgrades. I'm assuming this is a typo here that said we're going to expand and upgrade the existing infrastructure, preventing the growth for large. Should that be providing or enabling or something
Enabling,
different?
or which is preventing.
Okay.
It's to allow the development.
And the second one is the airport utility expansion. On the federal side, we had asked for a little over $1 million for the electrical donut hole out there in the on the edge of the runway. And this one here talks about water, electrical, and road infrastructure. Is this one of these overlapping?
No, thank you for that question. This is actually getting utilities to the undeveloped commercial side of the airport. So if you think about if you imagine the airport in your mind's eye, we have all of the hangars and the Apron E on the east side. On the west side, or between the airport runway and the Menard, is a large section of the airport that has had some fill placed on it, but it has nothing there. There's a gate that leads to nowhere. So that has been in the past and will continue to be in the current master plan. That's been the commercial expansion. There was an idea of a heliport over there and large hangars on that side. There's no infrastructure for any large hangars right now. There's no road, there's no water, there's no electrical. And so this money is identified as getting that started so that there can be commercial / federal / big operator development on that side of the airfield.
More jobs.
Probably Public Works again here. We like talking with you. The $150,000 to conduct a citywide walkability, connectivity, traffic, and parking for improving community connections. Is there something specific in there? Like, are we looking? I mean, is it an overall thing? I guess what would that type of project look like for us?
As in what the deliverable is, or what the goal is?
What the goal would be to get out of that?
Yeah. So.
Ian, excuse me. Okay. I don't have that online.
100? Did we?
150,000 ADA study?
No, we're on page 163 of 167.
We're on resolution 2340.
Did I click the wrong one? Yeah, that's where I am.
Is it on this sheet, sir?
Unless we took it off that one. This is what was in our packet.
So it's on the resolution, it just didn't make, there's a discrepancy between the resolution and the handout.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. I mean,
Just
it's
lost.
what's on our agenda. So, yeah, the $150,000 for the conduct the citywide walkability. I guess real quick, more so what I'm thinking of here is you and I had discussed earlier last week about our traffic problem. Like, that's really the big focus that we have is I think, one of the probably the number one issue that I got out talking to our community is traffic. That's what their concern seemed to be most commonly. And I know we've had this bypass project discussed, though we're still going to have a problem with traffic. Even if the bypass is put in, we'll still have traffic problems, honestly. So is this in an effort to help that?
No, this is more pedestrian related. So when you and I discuss traffic, that touches on the state and borough roads for the most part. We don't really maintain or own any high collector roads. And so to answer your question here, this is an ADA study. This has to do with walkability and kind of the downtown core, if you will. Your question is broader to coordination with the borough and the state and bringing our concerns to them, and I think the MPO is actually the mechanism that will bring the most change in the traffic, is the city having a voice within the MPO saying, we want the attention here, focus on these intersections, spend the federal monies that would typically go straight to DOT within the MPO now, and now that the city has a voting voice in the MPO, then say these are the highest priorities for us. So it's kind of off topic, but your question about that 150,000 has to do with walkability of the downtown core, and traffic is going to be a bigger coordination with the state and the borough.
Okay, anything else?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Graham?
I know it's rather unusual for me to commend the administration, but I would like to commend the administration. If you look at our legislative ask for our state legislature, we're only at about $6.5 million. That is a very reachable number, particularly compared to asks that we've had in previous years in the tens and even pushing $100 million. So I commend the administration for setting some sideboards there to keep us from looking like we're just looking for wheelbarrows full of money. So, thank you.
Madam Mayor, I just want to tack onto that. I want to say thank you guys a lot. I know in the years past it seemed a little confusing, and when we first got this, it seemed confusing when we got it, but after having a moment to look at it, and I think it was broken down fairly well for this, so thank you.
Okay. Is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, resolution serial number 2340 passes. We are on to new business. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First item pulled from the consent agenda, resolution serial number 2341, authorizing the mayor to enter into a purchase agreement pursuant to Wasilla Municipal Code 528030B to acquire 44.64, give or take, acres of land identified as Township 17 North, Range 1 West, Section 13, Lot A11, located at 3400 East Old Matanuska Road, Wasilla, Alaska, in the amount not to exceed $350,000 plus closing costs for expansion of the wastewater treatment plant.
Is there a motion to approve resolution serial number 2341?
Madam Mayor, I propose resolution 2341.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved by Councilmember Johnson and seconded by Councilmember Graham to approve resolution serial number 2341. Is there discussion?
Madam Mayor, I asked you, thank you, for just pulling this up for discussion. I'm in favor of it. When I first looked at this, I wanted to go on the record, or at least to have a comment on the record as to what the exact plans for this particular acquisition would be.
Public Works.
Yeah, thank you. We know that there'll be expansion to the sewer treatment plant, and so the reason for asking for this acquisition, asking for the authority to purchase this, has to do with the proximity of the property next to the sewer treatment plant. The way the current plant is laid out, we have 2 lagoons on the east side, and we have like 4 acres of infiltration beds to the south. And then we're pinched up against the railroad tracks. For us to make incremental improvements to the facility, we can't take the existing system offline. We have to build the new systems next door. And we're really pinched for space. And because I have to keep it running while we upgrade it, the 3.7 acres of uplands next door are very valuable to us, not really to anyone else, but they're very useful for us to add the new facilities over there. And then the wetlands that are also included are very valuable because of the wetlands permit we're approved. Can't talk, it's really late. That we are trying to acquire. We're trying to get more wetlands because that is the finishing process for our water treatment. So we get the wetlands that we need and we get the uplands that we need, and it's not really useful for anyone else. And so this is a very valuable addition to the facility.
Thank you.
Mr. Graham.
Thank you. And I would like to say I did go by your office today, Eric, and talk with your staff and looked at the depiction of the property, because it's kind of hard to tell on an 8.5 by 11 exactly what we're talking about. But this is pretty much undevelopable property for most people, and is really perfect for development. For the sewer system is immediately adjacent to the east of the sewer plant. So yeah, this is something that needs to happen.
Okay. Ian.
Madam Mayor, just a curiosity question here. last few purchases I've seen of land have come through, and I believe we had public comment on them. Is there any reason why this one wasn't going through that process? That'd be a Jamie question.
Yeah, that's a Jamie question.
Through the chair to Councilmember Crafton, I believe it's because the money's already been appropriated. I think in other instances, it went through the ordinance enactment procedure because the money wasn't in place. Correct me if I'm wrong, Finance Director. Or Public Works
Someone's
Director.
shaking their head over
That's
there.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't have a fund for the last water purchase. This is within the scoping of the monies that we're using to buy it.
Perfect. Just curiosity. I mean, I'm
Good
all for
question.
it. So.
Okay, is there further discussion? Hearing none. Is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, it passes. We are on to, Madam Clerk, please read the item under communications by title.
Actually, Madam Mayor, if I may, we have a couple more items that were pulled.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay, so we'll go to AM, may I?
Yeah, you can.
AM number 2360, confirmation of the mayoral appointment of Simon Brown to the Planning Commission.
Okay. I'm lost. Imagine that. It's under the
One more.
consent agenda. Oh. Hmm.
These two.
These two. Okay. Is there a motion to approve AM number 2360?
Madam Mayor, I move to deny the AM 2360. No? Just approve.
If I may.
Has to be a positive, affirmative motion.
So what process would be if we were in support of this, we'd need a motion and a second to get it on the floor, and then when we take the vote, you would vote in opposition to the AM.
Okay, that's fine. Motion to move the AM 2360.
Okay. Is there a second?
Graham will second that.
It has been moved by Councilmember Crafton and seconded by Councilmember Graham. Is there discussion?
Madam Mayor. So my reasoning for pulling this was Mr. Brown has had was just on our council here. And recently we had a joint planning and council meeting where we discussed mostly the rework of Title 16 moving forward. And he was the only person in opposition to what we wanted to do. And so I don't really see how it benefits our planning commission if we have somebody that wasn't in support of where we wanted to see the city move towards with some of our land development. And so I personally just don't feel it'd be the best idea to put this person on our planning commission if that's what we saw.
Is there any other discussion?
Yeah, Mayor, could we quickly discuss what, sort of refresh my memory on Title 16 as to where we were going with it? What was it that, what was the direction on that? I forget.
It's land use.
Just the land use and the regulations with that.
That, and under that comes planning. And planning does all the land use permitting and...
Right, that was the whole discussion of conditional use and the regulations associated with the use permits and all of that whole discussion under that. Okay. So in your discussion with Simon Brown, does he not want to reform Title 16? Is that in your understanding, that he would approach that in a negative way and just simply say that we're not going to do that?
No. He just had some objections to some of the things that was coming forward.
Okay. Do you understand his objections?
Yes.
Because I think that regardless of whether his objections is, can we continue to move the city forward even if he has objections?
Sure. He's only one member he would only be one member on the planning commission. And remember, he served on the planning commission before he came to council. Is there further discussion?
Madam Mayor, I was not present at that meeting. If I could ask Mr. Crafton what the specific objections were, it seems like you're more familiar with that.
The joint commission meeting?
Right.
You were at that one.
I don't believe I was.
Late?
I was at part of the meeting, but not at.
Okay. When we had discussed Title 16 as a whole with our attorney and doing a rewrite on it, Mr. Brown had basically stated that he felt we were fine where we were at and we didn't need to make any changes to our title because he felt the rules were in place because the rules were in place. And there was reason for where we had gotten. And he was the only one opposed to us having the attorney essentially look at the rewrite of that plan.
I think I would advise that council pull the minutes on that before you meet, only because I'm pretty sure that he had been in support of looking into Title 16 previously with the council. I'm not sure that we should pull the minutes. I think we should
happy
pull
with
the
that?
minutes because I'm not sure that that was his position. I feel like he was definitely, I remember his position being that, you know, it's important to have rules in place so that if we're going to amend something or bring an ordinance forward, he would want us to pay attention to institutional knowledge and maintain. But I don't think it was a hard no, don't touch Title 16, because that would be his position.
And remember, the council is the one, they're the legislative body, not the planning commission.
Madam Mayor. Also remember that it takes majority vote, so it's good to hear different views. And one person doesn't win the vote, right? Right. It's the process.
Okay. We will take a roll call vote.
Councilmember Graham, this is on the adoption of AM number 2360.
Vote yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Crafton?
No.
Councilmember Rubeo?
Yes.
Madam Mayor, is anybody on the line? Do we have any council members on the line? Madam Mayor, AM number 2360 fails with council members Graham, Johnson, and Rubio in support. Councilmember Crafton opposed. 4 affirmative votes to carry any measure before the council.
We are moving on to AM number 2361. Do I have a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move AM number 2361.
Is there a second?
Rubio seconds.
The motion has been made by Councilmember Graham, seconded by Councilmember Rubio. Is there discussion? Mr. Graham.
Madam Mayor, I'd ask this to be pulled so that the chief or one of his representatives could say a little bit about what this upgrade accomplishes. Is it filling in areas we have now where we don't have the appropriate amount of service? Is it just bringing us up to date? You said you might be able to speak to that tonight.
Councilmember Graham, just for your recollection, MATCOM is its own separate entity now compared to the department. I don't have any oversight over MATCOM, but Acting Director Dan Stearns and Joel Butcher are here that can probably give you more detail than what I can.
Would you gentlemen please come to the podium and give us some explanation here? This is the interim director of MATCOM, Dan Stearns, and Joel Butcher.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Council, thank you. I'd be happy to clarify any questions, answer any questions.
You just let me know what this $475,000 is going for. Is it adding to our capabilities? Is it kind of leveling our capabilities where we're weak in some areas? Is it just bringing technology up to date? What are we doing here?
It's an upgrade. It is upgrading the current technology that was, we first went live with the current technology in January of 2006. And so it's about 20-year-old vintage software. And so the idea is to upgrade and move the software available to us now to a more robust, more stable platform at a reduced cost.
And will this upgrade provide any sort of upgrade to our alternative dispatch center, so when power goes down like it has the last couple times this month, or is this just for the primary MAPCOM facility?
No, it would be extended to the backup center as well.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Hearing none, is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, guys. I'm sorry that you had to stay all night.
My pleasure.
We are on to communications. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We only have one item for informational purposes, Parks and Rec Commission meeting minutes, November 8th, 2023.
Okay. Audience comments. We are now at audience comments, a time for members of the public to share their views with the council. This is not a question and answer period or a time for dialogue. Speakers may be referred to administration, or issues raised may be taken under advisement by the council or administration. Is there anyone present who would like to address the City Council? Please begin by stating your first and last name. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. My name is Jackie Goforth. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you again. I want you to know that it has been, I gave that set of reconsiderations to the clerk in May, and that is the first time I have seen them since then. So if they had the weight of official documents, why wasn't something done about them? And if you've ever done negotiations, the reason I said remove the books from the library is because you always shoot for the moon and then settle. That was a shot at a negotiation. That was not on an official form. And if it was supposed to be an official form, why on earth wasn't it treated as it? Secondly, the process that is set up for the librarians in order to do reconsiderations has been set up for the librarians, and it's very librarian-centrist and it's very fascist. The definition of fascism is a tyrannical control. The whole thing is controlled by librarians. They control everything. They do the original meeting, the time frame, and on the adherence to the time frame, they don't have to adhere to it, only you do. The hearing is controlled by them, the consultation is controlled by them, the questions session is controlled by them, absolutely everything is controlled by them. Now I want you to know that to prove obscenity requires passing the Miller-Ginsburg test. It's not easy. But our Attorney General has specified some of it. And you have to be over 18 and you're giving it out. There has to be certain acts, penetration, sexual penetration, masturbation, lewd depictions, okay? It has to be harmful to children. That's a tough one. The first one is, does it create prurient interest in a person under 16 as seen by the community, the average adult in the community? Second one, is there serious value of literary, artistic, educational, political, or scientific for persons under 16? And the last one, is it patently obscene? Does the average adult in the community find the work patently obscene for persons under 16? How on earth can you prove that if it's just you? Without having anything from the community, how on earth can you prove that something is obscene? Think about it. The next thing I'm going to do, and I have done it, if anybody wants to give me their opinion on a book, it's JackieIvy@hotmail.com. That's my writing name. And I will take your statements. And the next time I have a hearing, I will bring how many as I get, because it's almost impossible to prove if you don't know what the community feels about a book. True? The whole thing has been set up by librarians, and it really needs to be looked at. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the council at this time? Seeing no one, we will close audience comments. and bring it back to the dais. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just want to extend the invitation to the city council members. We have the employee holiday luncheon this Friday, December 1st, from 11:30 to 2 o'clock here in council chambers. And of course, that luncheon is generously funded every year by the city council. Notice the special meetings. Remember, we have special meetings on December 13th and 14th and the 18th. 13, 14, and if we continue to the 18th, will be the FY 25-26 goals and initiatives. If we are finished with goals and initiatives on the 14th, we're still going to have the meeting on the 18th because we are going to have the FY 22 audit report at that meeting. So those are all a go. And then AML, of course, is next week, and we will see council members Graham, Crafton, and Johnson down at the AML conference. So that's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, may I ask a question of the clerk? So on the holiday luncheon, this has changed over the years I've been here. It used to be that the city council could bring wrapped gifts and then they would be given out as part of what was given out. Last year we didn't do that. What is the protocol for this year? Do we know?
Through Madam Mayor to the council, I'm not familiar with that. Under prior administration, what I was familiar with is directors, we brought a $50 gift card that we bought, and then those were raffled off, or not, they were not raffled, but they were, you put your name in a hat and it was drawn, but we're not doing that this year.
No comment, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Rubio.
Great short meeting tonight. Definitely. It was actually great. But remember, I won't be here on December 11th. I will be here for the special meetings. So just a note on that. Have a great night.
Councilmember Crofton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you all for that turned out, especially those who stayed. I know it's a long meeting and it's a long night. Again, not long ago I was sitting on that side, and it's not easy sitting there for this many hours. So I really appreciate it, and I thank you for all the public comments that came out. Looking forward to seeing what some of those resolutions come out for some of these book things. So I'm glad we're taking some action and we're doing something. I hope that satisfies some of what we can do at this time. Yes, I'm looking forward to this and looking forward to seeing my first AML this year. Thank you much.
Okay. Councilmember Graham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and kind of late to thank everybody that came today, but it was great to see that many people here that had an interest in what was going on, even though that interest was primarily in one thing, which is the library. That's a sign of the community, as people coming out to speak their piece and to hear what's going on. So I especially enjoy these meetings. I know a lot of council members like to be home by 7 o'clock. I don't mind staying until midnight. That doesn't bother me at all. But the mayor doesn't like it. But
I have a life.
But anyway, thank you for coming, and thank you for your input. I would just remind people of the same thing that I tell people when they ask me if they should run for office. I said, if you're not patient, no, you shouldn't run. Because it takes time to make anything happen in any sort of setting, whether you're trying to influence the library committee or whether you're trying to influence planning commission or city council. You may have something you're passionate about, but if you expect it to happen in a couple months, it's not going to happen. So patience is the key, as well as persistence. Jackie, you have been very persistent, and I'm glad to see that, because I hate to see these issues flash up and then just go away. And I don't think this is going to be one of those issues that goes away. The flash will be there. It's just a matter of how big the fire is going to be when things happen. So I wanted to thank everybody for that. I wanted to thank the council for being patient as we went through those legislative priorities. I have a large belief that you just don't ask for the moon. You ask for very specific things, and I think that we did. When I say we, I think the administration did a really good job this year of pinning things down. Unfortunately, at the last meeting, it just wasn't explained what those were. So hopefully next year, we can do the same sort of thing, introduce them once, and then talk about them the next time. So, but I wanted to thank everybody for being here. Thank you to staff for Great questions, Ted. It's good to see you here. Hope you're having fun, even though I know you're not, but maybe you'll be Santa Claus on Friday, who knows. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Good night.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody who did testify, even though that they have left. My parting comment is we got to where we are today by what we selected, which was the whole point of my original diatribe, is that we selected a certain category and we're not looking necessarily at the big picture. So I look forward to working through a resolution, and that's down the line, and I realize that. Thank you very much, everybody.
And it's 9:23. Sorry, guys. Anyway, the library fiasco that's going on, lacking of a better term, we will move everything from the young adult into the adult section until we get some legal opinions. We will say temporary simply because if we don't, we are breaking federal law. So we have to be very careful and concise about what we do. And Holly's about to have a fit, so go ahead, Holly.
I would not say that that would make you in violation of federal law. I think we're finding out what that law, what the trajectory, or what the parameters are. That's all.
That's okay. Anyway, that's what we're doing, and so when we get a legal opinion and we know where we stand and whatever, then we will make a decision. So, thank you guys to all of the staff for hanging out and not having a mutiny. So, with that, we are adjourned at 9:24.